Chapter 4894. Hee, fellow Taoist, you must be joking. At this moment, light and shadow overflowed on the rock wall. A short but fat golden core cultivator hurriedly rushed out of the cave and cupped his hands towards Xiaohua. I'm Pang Tuojian, the owner of this shop. Greetings, fellow Taoist. Xiaohua didn't reveal his cultivation at this time, and Yu Hua and Lu Qingyu behind him weren't golden core cultivators, so Pang Tuojian calling Xiaohua, fellow Taoist, wasn't disrespectful. Xiaohua smiled and returned the greeting. It's fine, it's fine. This puppet is refined very well. It can be seen that fellow Taoist Pang is unique in refining puppets. You're too kind. Pang Tuojian's face showed a trace of pride, but his words were also humble. He raised his hand and said, fellow Taoist, you seem to be an expert in refining puppets. How about we have a chat inside the shop? I was just about to nag. Xiaohua nodded and followed Pang Tuojian into the shop. After passing through the restriction on the rock wall, a space of several acres appeared in front of them. The four walls of the space were shining, illuminating the whole space. It looked no different from an ordinary shop. The space was divided into several areas. Some areas were filled with human-shaped, beast-shaped, and bird-shaped puppets. These puppets were neatly placed, and there were already many cultivators choosing them. Next to these areas were a few aura refining boys standing respectfully. There were also some damaged puppets in other areas, such as human-shaped arms or bird-shaped wings. The arrangement was a bit messy, and there were only one or two cultivators walking around casually. In the depths of the space, there was a place that occupied more than half of the space, where the materials used to refine puppets were piled up. There were even fewer cultivators there. Xiaohua glanced around and didn't see any figures there. In an even smaller area, on the right side of the space, there were several shelves with some jade slips on them. They were presumably the methods to refine puppets. After looking at the layout of the shop, Xiaohua walked towards the shelf on the right side of the space. The cultivator named Pang Tuojian was surprised and quickly followed behind Xiaohua. Fellow Taoist Pang. Looking at the restriction on the shelf, he thought for a moment and asked, your shop actually has so many methods to refine puppets? Hee. Hearing this, Pang Tuojian smiled and said in a low voice, fellow Taoist, you are obviously an expert in refining. Most of the Taoist friends who came to I's shop would choose puppets directly, and the rest would look for the materials they needed. Only half of them would come to the jade slip that recorded the sacrificial refining method. Since fellow Taoist is also an expert, I won't hide it from fellow Taoist. There seem to be many jade slips here, but in fact, most of them are the same. Xiaohua smiled and said with a nod, fellow Taoist Pang is an honest person. To be honest, I was also surprised to see so many jade slips. I didn't think that there would be so many sacrificial refining methods in a place like the Fengyan Kingdom. Of course. Pang Tuojian smiled obsequiously. Xiahong Mountain is a small place after all, and the Fengyan Kingdom is not famous for its refining. I only copied it after seeing it in the Enlightenment Environment Alliance's Universe auction. Oh. Xiaohua's heart moved, and he asked, the Universe auction hall has so many puppet refinement methods? Of course. Pang Tuojian answered without hesitation. The Universe Auction Hall was opened by the disciple of the Enlightenment Alliance's Alliance Master, Qi Sanren. It mainly auctions for magic tools and magic treasures, and puppets are naturally one of them. Of course, there are countless sacrificial refining methods. Xiaohua's heart itched when he heard this, and he couldn't help but ask, fellow Taoist Pang, can you tell what kind of sacrificial refining methods you've seen? Oh. Hearing Xiaohua's words, Pang Tuojian raised his eyebrows and looked at Xiaohua from top to bottom. With a fake smile, he asked, if fellow Taoist wants to buy my shop's sacrificial refining method, I can naturally introduce it to you. But if fellow Taoist wants to come to my shop to broaden your horizons, then forgive me for not accompanying you. Of course, fellow Taoist can view them in I's shop, and I definitely won't chase fellow Taoist away. How dare you? Lu Qingyu couldn't help but scold, Pang Tuojian, how can you speak to Senior Zhang like that? Senior Zhang? When Pang Tuojian heard this, he couldn't help but panic. However, he looked at Xiao Hua and said with a smile, since you're senior, then I'll tell you the truth. In my shop, as long as you have crystals, then you're my senior. If you don't have crystals and only want to look, then I won't accompany you even if you're senior. I'm doing business here according to the rules of the mountain people, so I'm not afraid of any senior causing trouble. After saying this, he turned around and walked away. Perhaps because Lu Qingyu called him senior, he didn't dare to offend Lu Qingyu too much. He even called a qi refining boy over to accompany him. Forget it. Xiao Hua smiled faintly and stopped the boy who was refining qi. Although he didn't know how many jade slips there were on the shelf in front of him, he knew that while the Dawn Rain continent was in dire shortage of jade slips for cultivation techniques, weapon refining techniques, alchemy techniques, and so on, the Yilin continent was filled with jade slips for cultivation techniques. This also caused the Yilin continent to have far more Daoist cultivators than the Dawn Rain continent, and the Daoist cultivators' realm and strength were also far higher than the Dawn Rain continents. Of course, he also understood that no matter how many cultivation techniques there were, human nature was always so real. Damn it! Yu Hua couldn't help but shout, he's such a snob. Although we don't have many crystals, but what? Xiao Hua laughed and said, don't be fooled by him. He's not the only one bidding for cultivation techniques to refine puppets in this auction. If we want to buy them, we have to go to another shop. That's right. Even if he's the only shop in this auction, we can still go to Qiyu auction. Nuo Yeqing said fiercely. Ha ha ha. That's right. Let's go. Lu Qingyu also laughed loudly and followed Xiao Hua out of the shop. After leaving the shop, Xiao Hua smiled and said to Lu Qingyu, Qingyu, it seems that without crystals, I can't even be a senior anymore. Let's hurry up and find a place to bid. Let's first sell some cultivation methods and get some crystal stones. Senior, I'll let you know. Lu Qingyu, who had been standing on both sides of the valley, replied, Senior, these shops on the stone wall are all for sale. The auction should still be in the valley. Previously, this junior specially asked Elder Yuan. Other than selling cultivation techniques to Jing Pengtang, there's another way to sell them at the auction. As for when the auction will start, this junior doesn't know. If senior wants to know, this junior will go and find out. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, and give it a tip. Chapter 4895. Go quickly. Xiao Hua nodded. Yes. Lu Qingyu agreed. Just as he was about to fly away, Yu Hua spoke again, Junior Marshal Brother Lu, please wait a moment. What's the matter, Senior Marshal Sister? Lu Qingyu stopped and asked. Yu Hua said to Xiao Hua, Senior, Junior wants to go with Junior Marshal Brother Lu. When we find the place of the auction, Junior will first show the jade slips we prepared. If Senior is interested, why don't you let Yi Qing take you around the auction house of Xiahong Mountain? Xiao Hua nodded. He raised his hand and pointed to the side of the valley and said, Go ahead. This old man and Yi Qing will walk slowly along this valley. When you find something, come and find us. Okay. Yu Hua said and gave a few messaging talismans to Nuo Yeqing. Then, she hurriedly flew into the valley with Lu Qingyu. Afterwards, Xiao Hua strolled around many shops with great interest. They either sold talismans, medicinal pills, magic tools, or materials. Just as Xiao Hua thought, in the shops that sold talismans, whether it was the materials used to make talismans or the method to refine talismans, they were all complete. There was no shortage or defect. All kinds of talisman brushes, talisman papers, talisman inks, fireball talismans, icicle talismans, and so on were placed on jade shelves or restrictions, allowing people to bid and buy at will. In the shops that sold medicinal pills, there were all kinds of spiritual grasses and spiritual fruits. Some of them were even unknown to Xiaohua. Especially the pill recipes that Xiaohua cared about, they were all complete and there was no defect. Just the medicinal pills that qi refining cultivators could take, there were over 100 kinds in one shop. In the shops that sold magic tools, all kinds of magic tools were placed in an orderly manner. There were also all kinds of refining materials. As for the refining method, just like what he saw before, all kinds of jade slips were also available for purchase. What made Xiaohua sigh with emotion was that in a small shop, Xiaohua also saw the complete cultivation methods of qi refining, foundation establishment, and jindan. Moreover, the owner of the shop also promised that if Xiaohua had enough crystal stones, he could provide the complete cultivation methods of yuanying and divining. Coming out of the shop, Xiaohua looked at the setting sun in the valley and could not help but sigh in his heart. This Yilan continent is indeed a paradise for Taoist cultivators. Not to mention some large city, even this tiny Xiahong mountain auction ground is like heaven and earth when compared to Dawn Rain continent. When Xiaohua first came to the auction house, on one hand, he wanted to obtain some crystal stones. On the other hand, he wanted to plunder some cultivation methods and pill recipes. But after looking around for so long, Xiaohua discovered that this place was still desolate. Cultivation methods and pill recipes were still of a low level. He already had a lot of these things in his space, so there was nothing he wanted to buy. Not to mention that he didn't have too many crystal stones right now. Senior. At this time, Nua Yeching whispered, Master has been gone for a long time and hasn't come back. Junior had sent a message earlier, but Master didn't come back. Could it be that something happened? Xiaohua also felt a bit strange, but he smiled and said, it should be fine. This old man has been observing all this time. The Xiahong Mountain auction ground is for foundation establishment and aura refining cultivators. Aura's core disciples only account for 20%, and there are only a few nascent soul cultivators. Your master and the others are all in the Aura's core realm, so there shouldn't be any problems in this auction ground. Let's go, this old man also doesn't want to look anymore. We'll go look for them. Yes, this junior has just inquired. The auction ground that Master mentioned just now is right in front of us. Nua Yeching said and pointed to a bright and resplendent place in the distance of the valley. The valley was not perfectly straight. When Xiaohua and Nua Yeching turned a big corner, they discovered that there was a hill-like protrusion in that place. It bulged out from the stone wall, and there were many holes on it. Many cultivators were flying into these holes from various places. Let's go, let's go. Xiaohua and Nua Yeching had just flown close when they heard the extremely excited shouts of several young aura refining disciples above them. If we're late, I'm afraid we won't be able to snatch it. My goodness, it's actually a cultivation method that relies on the mutated spiritual qi to cultivate. Just thinking about it makes me excited. Although these disciples had already flown past, their voices still floated into Xiaohua's ears. Of course, I've been cultivating with my sex cultivation method for several years, but I haven't made any progress. I thought there was something wrong with my cultivation, but Master secretly told me that it wasn't my problem, it was the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. Look. Xiaohua said with a slight smile, your master made a big move. Even if you sent 10 summoning talismans, I'm afraid he still wouldn't be able to get away. This is all due to Senior's merit. Nua Yeching said very respectfully. Merit? Xiaohua was slightly surprised and looked up and down at Nua Yeching. Nua Yeching hastily sped up and said, Senior, let's quickly go and help Master. Xiaohua smiled and didn't ask much. His figure streaked across the air and strode towards the light shadow. Without waiting for Xiaohua and Nua Yeching's figures to fall into the cave, they saw several qi refining disciples excitedly flying out. As they flew, they whispered, haha, we've made a fortune. Such a miraculous cultivation method is actually sold so cheaply. If I were to sell it, I wouldn't sell it for less than 10 top-grade crystals. What do you know? Another chi refining disciple also happily said with a smile, "This is called small profits but quick turnover. A chi refining cultivation method that costs 10 top-grade crystals. Who would buy it? Do you think I can afford it?" Senior brother. One of the female cultivators with ponytails blinked her big eyes and asked in a low voice, "Such a cheap cultivation method, could it be fake? Who would have such a good cultivation method and not keep it for themselves? Why would they take it here and casually sell it? Didn't they say it already?" This cultivation method was modified by their grandmaster. They still have a lot of it. Because they know that the spiritual chi of heaven and earth has changed, many cultivators' cultivation methods are not suitable anymore. That's why they took it out to sell. Another disciple immediately explained, moreover, they also said that this cultivation method is easy to modify. If they don't sell it now, they won't be able to sell it in the future when all the sects and clans modify it. Fourth senior brother is right. Another disciple smiled and said, "You may not know. This little brother went there early. Previously, when they were selling it, no one believed them at all. This little brother also took a look and didn't dare to buy it. But later, 2 nascent soul stage seniors suddenly came. These 2 nascent soul stage seniors seemed to be looking for something. They asked one stall after another. When they arrived in front of these 2 seniors, they didn't say anything and took out crystals to buy it. Moreover, after buying it, they immediately left. At that time, this little brother realized that these 2 seniors had already sold it here before. Therefore, these 2 nascent soul stage seniors came again to look for it. This little brother hurriedly sent a message to my fellow senior brothers. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote, vote for a recommendation vote, collect, reward, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 4896. Maybe those 2 nascent soul stage seniors were also acting? The female disciple still didn't dare to believe it. However, as they spoke, they gradually flew away. Xiaohua didn't know how the others would explain it. Xiaohua and Nuo Yeqing landed at the entrance of the cave. In front of them was a large hall, about 100 feet in size. The hall was transparent from top to bottom, left to right, and they could clearly see some figures moving about inside. At the end of the hall, there were several doors of the same size. In front of these doors, there were cultivators guarding them. Inside the hall, there were naturally cultivators flying in front of Xiaohua. They quickly walked through the doors, took out a crystal, and handed it to the cultivators guarding the door. Xiaohua understood that these guards should be the disciples of Yuhong Mountain. Xiaohua and Nuo Yeqing walked to the door. The guard asked politely, "Seniors, do you want to sell something or buy something?" Nuo Yeqing hurriedly asked, "What about selling and buying?" "I'll let you know." The guard hurriedly replied, "If you want to sell something, you'll have to pay a mid-grade crystal. Junior will give you a token, and you can find a stall inside. If you want to buy something, you'll only have to pay a mid-grade crystal." Nuo Yeqing looked at Xiaohua. Xiaohua smiled and said, "Your master has already paid a mid-grade crystal. What else do we have to pay? 2 low-grade crystals are enough." "Yes, senior." Nuo Yeqing responded. She took out 2 low-grade crystals from her storage ring and handed them to the guard. After he finished speaking, he respectfully asked the 2 to enter. When he was outside the door, he didn't feel that there was anything noisy inside. But when Xiaohua stepped through the door, a burst of noise surged like waves. Xiaohua couldn't help but frown slightly. Xiaohua released his divine sense to explore and saw that this was a palace that was dozens of acres in size. It was somewhat similar to the auction house he had seen in Jinghua City. The entire palace was divided into several areas, and each area was divided into many small sections. The items sold in the small sections of each area were different. Some were pills, some were magic tools, some were jade slips, and so on. There were quite a few cultivators in every region, some whispering, some clamoring, all of them haggling, just like the marketplace of the secular world. In the most central area, there were many cultivators gathered around a grid. These cultivators looked a little crazy and were desperately trying to squeeze to the nearest grid. They even shouted, "Senior, this is my crystal. Please give me the cultivation method. My attribute is..." Fellow Taoists, fellow Taoists. Lu Qingyu's weary voice sounded amidst the clamor, "Don't be in such a hurry. One by one, all right? I've prepared a lot of jade slips here, enough for each of you. Senior, Junior wants to bring one for junior sister. My junior sister is of the water attribute. Senior, I have 4 junior sisters. They are of the water attribute and the fire attribute respectively." "Oh?" Hearing this, Xiaohua asked curiously, "Yi Qing, when did your master copy so many jade slips?" "Shoo." Nua Yeqing whispered, "Senior, my master is a money grubber. I'm afraid that when he heard that you were coming to the auction, he didn't stay idle all the way." "Ha ha ha." Xiaohua laughed. He immediately remembered that when he came out of the puppet shop, Lu Qingyu was anxiously looking for the auction. It seemed that he had already prepared. Seeing that Xiaohua didn't have any intention to blame, Nua Yeqing said again, "Senior, please wait here for a moment. Junior will go and help my master, okay?" Xiaohua nodded and said, "This old man will go and look at other places." However, before Xiaohua finished speaking, he frowned and said indifferently, "You don't have to go first. It seems that there's a good show to watch." "Oh?" Nua Yeqing was slightly stunned and somewhat puzzled. However, she didn't need to look far away. In a door not far from her, a dozen Golden Core Realm cultivators wearing bright armor walked out with a spirit-severing stage cultivator around them. They went straight to the crowd of cultivators. "Senior, are these people from Xiehong Mountain's Yuhong Mountain?" Nua Yeqing was shocked and immediately understood something. She whispered, "It must be that master and martial uncle's bidding for the cultivation method attracted his attention." "That's right." Xiaohua's expression didn't change. He withdrew his gaze from other places and waved his hand. "I'll go and take a look and see what this guy plans to do." "Yes, senior." Nua Yeqing stole a glance at Xiaohua. She suddenly felt that Xiaohua was very similar to a person she was very familiar with. However, looking at Xiaohua's back and Xiaohua's expression of contempt for the spirit-severing stage cultivator, she shook her head with a bitter smile. Since Xiaohua noticed the arrival of a group of Golden Core Realm cultivators, the cultivators standing around the aura-refining disciples to watch the show naturally also noticed them. They hastily made way for them, and some cultivators who were familiar with Yuhong Mountain's Yuhong Mountain hurriedly greeted them. Yuhong Mountain's Yuhong Mountain's Yuhong Mountain had a smile on his face. He very elegantly nodded to the surrounding people, and from time to time, he would even raise his hand to signal. He looked very amiable and approachable. When the Golden Core Realm cultivators arrived behind the aura-refining disciples, they naturally didn't berate them like the people of the secular world. They released their spiritual pressure, and those aura-refining disciples immediately sensed it. Although their faces were full of displeasure, they still stopped shouting and obediently made way for the lattice. Through the gaps in the crowd, Yuehua and Lu Qingyu's somewhat tired figures appeared. "Oh my, so it's the 2 fellow Taoists from the Chanha school." More than 10 Golden Core Realm cultivators surrounded the lattice, blocking the other cultivators outside. Yuhong Mountain's Yuhong Mountain walked over with a surprised expression. He cupped his hands and said, "This old man was wondering who it was. We've really neglected you." Seeing the spirit-severing stage cultivator salute them, Yuehua and Lu Qingyu were somewhat terrified. They hastily came out from the lattice and respectfully bowed. "Junior greets Yuhong Mountain's Yuhong Mountain." Get up, there's no need to be so polite." Yuhong Mountain waved his hand and said with a smile, "This old man is very familiar with your sect head Lu. Last time, your elder Yu came to my Jingping Hall to sell some method for selecting spiritual roots. This old man just happened to not be in the auction house. I only found out after I came back. This old man was just thinking of finding a time to go to Xingyin Ridge. What a coincidence, you guys actually came first." Come, let's go to the Jingping Hall. This old man will let the disciples serve tea. You guys wait and tell this old man what's going on. Why is it so lively? This. Yuehua and Lu Qingyu were somewhat hesitant. They didn't expect that just selling some aura refining cultivation methods would attract Yuhong Mountain's attention. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote, vote for a recommendation vote, bookmark, and reward. Thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 4897. What? My Jingping Hall can't accommodate 2 fellow Taoists? My spirit tea isn't worthy of 2 golden core cultivators? Hermit Yuhong was a little displeased when he saw the 2 hesitating and asked coldly. Yuhua didn't dare to hesitate and hurriedly said with a smile, "It's our fortune to be able to drink tea at Jingping Hall. However, if we go, these qi refinement disciples will be disappointed. Why don't we wait until we sell the remaining jade slips before going to talk with Senior?" That's right, Senior Yuhong. An aura refining disciple who seemed to have some background said loudly, Junior just came from Jingping Hall to buy a suitable aura refining cultivation method for Junior. Senior, you invited these 2 seniors, so wouldn't Junior and the others have come in vain? You're a disciple of Danshao Country's Hua Sun sect, right? Hermit Yuhong smiled and asked softly. His tone was like the benevolence of an elder towards a junior. The disciple was shocked and hurriedly bowed. Senior is a god. This junior is Hua Sun sect's disciple, Zhou Fun. This junior didn't expect Senior to have seen this junior. This junior greets Senior. Hee hee. Hermit Yuhong waved his hand and helped the disciple up. There's no need to be so polite. Anyone who comes to my Shihong Mountains auction house is my guest. Moreover, Fairy Qin Yan is a senior that I greatly respect. Her disciple came to my auction house, so I definitely can't let her disciple be deceived. What do you mean? Zhou Fun was shocked and looked at Hermit Yuhong in confusion. He didn't seem to understand what he was saying. At this moment, Hermit Yuhong looked up at the Qi refinement disciples on his left and said loudly, "This Zhou Fun is Fairy Qingyan's disciple. I can't let him be deceived. Although you're not Fairy Qingyan's disciples, you're my guests since you came to my Shihong Mountains auction house. If you're deceived in the auction house, how can I face your seniors? This old man is a loose cultivator, so I know how difficult it is to cultivate. I also hate the dangers of fake cultivation techniques, so, in this old man's auction, I will absolutely not allow fake cultivation techniques to exist." When they heard up to here, not to mention Zhou Fun, even all the nearby Qi refinement cultivators came to an understanding. Yu Hua and Lu Qingyu's faces even flushed red, and they opened their mouths with the intention of arguing. However, when Master Yuhong spoke up to here, he still didn't point it out, so it was impossible for them to brace themselves and forcefully claim this stain. That's not right. Senior. Zhou Fun hurriedly said, Junior has just heard from some fellow Taoists that this cultivation method was identified by 2 nascent soul stage seniors before being sold. Sigh, all of you are still too inexperienced. Hermit Yuhong said earnestly. Who are those 2 nascent soul seniors? Where are they? How do you know that those 2 nascent soul seniors are not the masters of these 2 gold core cultivators? Just think about it. A cultivation method that can be used to mutate the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, in this world, that is a priceless treasure. If they had it, why would they sell it here instead of cultivating it themselves? And, why would they sell it so cheaply? But, Zhou Fun still asked, didn't many Qi refinement disciples already buy it earlier? I didn't see them return. Sigh, this is the brilliance of the 2 gold core disciples of Chanhe sect. Hermit Yuhong sighed again. For a cultivation method to be sold cheaply, regardless of whether it is real or not, it should still be worth that little bit of crystal, right? Zhou Fun, think about it yourself. If you discovered that there was a problem with this cultivation method, would you return here for that little bit of crystal? You still have the face to say that you were deceived and cheated? Senior. Yuhua couldn't help but raise her voice. Have you seen Junior's cultivation method? How can you be so sure that Junior's cultivation method is fake? Hee hee. Hermit Yuhong laughed. His gaze was like lightning as he looked at Yuhua and said, "Do you still need me to see it? How can I not know what kind of foundation your Chanhe sect has? A sect controlled by a nascent soul cultivator can't even compare to my auction house. How can it have such a miraculous cultivation method? Previously, I already said that if I were Lu Hanhuan and obtained such a powerful cultivation method, would have hidden it in Xingyan Ridge and started training my own disciples. Why would I sell it here? I won't hide it from you." Previously, when Yu Zhuohong came to sell some spirit root selection technique, my heart jumped when I heard it. Since when did the so-called spirit root appear in this world? Deceiving others in my Jingping Hall is equivalent to slapping my face. I haven't even gone to Xingyan Ridge, but you actually came to me again. I gave Lu Hanhuan face and wanted you to follow me quietly. Since you are unwilling, don't blame me for being impolite. Lu Qingyu was still arguing. He handed the jade slip to Hermit Yuhong and said, "Senior, please take a look. This is really a cultivation method suitable for mutated spirit qi. This cultivation method doesn't belong to my Chanhe sect." Pa. Hermit Yuhong's sleeves shook, and the jade slip in Lu Qingyu's hand shattered into pieces. Hermit Yuhong said coldly, "Do you think I am slandering you? When you were selling it just now, you had already attracted the attention of my disciples. They had already given me the fake cultivation method you were selling. If I wasn't confident, why would I come here to undermine you? Despicable, truly despicable." Zhou Fen naturally believed Hermit Yuhong's words. He looked at Yuehua and Lu Qingyu and said, "You are actually so despicable. When I return to the sect, I will definitely report this to my master. Fengyan Kingdom's Chanhe sect actually deceived us Qi refinement disciples. Their actions are too despicable. Let's go." A few Golden Core disciples on the left stepped forward and said coldly, "The two of you, follow me to the Jingping Hall. After the Patriarch deals with you, let your sect master come and ask for punishment." Damn it. Yuhua gritted her teeth and pointed at Yuhong Mountain. "Senior Yuhong, if you covet this cultivation technique, you can discuss it with me. You can split it 30 to 70, 50 to 50, or even 30 to 70 is fine too. You are actually so vicious that you want to take it all for yourself. You are really too sanctimonious." "Humph." Hermit Yuhong sneered. "You are really biting back. I am in charge of such a large auction, so why would I care about your few cultivation methods? What I care about is the reputation of my auction. Disciples, why aren't you making a move? Don't ruin my auction's reputation." "Yes." The group of Golden Core disciples said. Two of them raised their hands to grab Yuehua and Lu Qingyu. "How dare you!" Xiao Hua cursed angrily and stepped forward. At this moment, a voice came from afar. "Wait, I have something to say. Vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, tip it, and thank you for all forms of support." Chapter 4898. Oh. Who is this? Xiao Hua was greatly surprised. He raised his head and saw an old man in embroidered clothes flying down from a door 1 floor above the palace. Behind this old man, several young disciples were excitedly accompanying him. Wen Qing and the female disciple with the plum blossom symbol on her wrist that Xiao Hua had previously seen were impressively before his eyes. Interesting. Xiao Hua pinched his chin, and his eyes flashed with a thoughtful expression. However, just as Xiao Hua was pondering, he was suddenly startled, and he exclaimed in his heart, "Io, this Xiao remembers now. This plum blossom seems to be a plum blossom-shaped command token that this Xiao saw in the pile of bones on the 4th floor of the Inkcloud Black Forest many years ago, right? That's right. This plum blossom is different from ordinary plum blossoms. It actually has 7 petals. Could it be that this woman is related to the bones? If that's the case, then it's interesting. A token from the Yilan continent actually ran to the Dawn Rain continent. This can only mean that the owner of the bones knows the transmission passage of the Wuming mountain range and went to the Dawn Rain continent from here. Moreover, they even went to the Inkcloud Black Forest. The hermit from Yuhong Mountain frowned slightly when he saw the two people suddenly speaking. However, when his gaze swept past Xiao Hua and Nua Yeching beside him, he immediately understood something. He shifted his gaze away from the two people and looked at the old man. When the Yuhong Mountain person saw that the old man was actually a late nascent soul stage cultivator, he couldn't help but be shocked. He didn't dare to be too negligent and cupped his hands and asked, "Oh? This fellow Taoist looks very unfamiliar. He doesn't seem to be a cultivator of my Tsupu Immortal Alliance. Does fellow Taoist have anything to say?" The late nascent soul stage old man naturally also glanced at Xiao Hua, who spoke at the same time. However, Xiao Hua's cultivation had already been revealed. It was only around the nascent soul stage. After the old man saw it, he ignored the Yuhong Mountain person and asked the woman beside him in a low voice, "Qing Er, are you sure it's these cultivators?" The nascent soul stage old man's words were very sudden. Not to mention the Yuhong Mountain person, even Xiao Hua was surprised when he heard it. He and the others had only met them twice when they entered the Xiahong Mountain auction house. He had even been glared at by this woman for no reason. Now, she had actually come knocking on his door. It was truly baffling. On the other hand, the Yuhong Mountain cultivator was surprised. He looked at the group of disciples behind the Yuanying old man and a thoughtful expression appeared on his face. Reporting to Granduncle. The woman called Jing hastily replied, "It's these cultivators." "Are you sure?" The nascent soul old man frowned slightly. He looked at the Yuhong hermit, who was also silent, and could not help but ask. The girl named Jing Er bit her lips and thought for a while. Then she said, "Boy is sure." At the time, the boy was searching the Jingping Hall. However, after searching for a long time, he did not find any clues. Thus, the boy asked the Jingping Hall disciple. The Jingping Hall disciple did not dare to easily answer. He took the boy to find the so-called Jingping Hall master. When the boy saw the Jingping Hall master, this senior Yuhong was also in the Jingping Hall. Before the boy could greet him, he saw a few golden core cultivators rush in from outside. They took out a jade slip and reported to Senior Yuhong, "The Chanha sect disciple who sold the spirit root a few days ago has come again." The senior's expression changed. "Damn it." Then he took the jade slip from the disciple and hurried into the secret room. The boy did not dare to delay and quickly sent a message to Granduncle. "Now that Senior Yuhong is here, I presume these cultivators are." The nascent soul old man nodded slightly. Then, he cupped his hands and bowed to the Yuhong hermit. He said, "Greetings, fellow Taoist Yuhong." Hearing this nascent soul old man call him fellow Taoist, the Yuhong hermit narrowed his eyes. He did not return the greeting and asked indifferently, "Who are you?" "Heh heh." The nascent soul old man smiled faintly and said a few words via voice transmission. The expression of the Yuhong mountain man changed slightly. Although he was somewhat unwilling, he still raised his hand and forced a smile. "Heh heh, it's actually guests from afar. This is truly beyond this old man's expectations. This old man represents the Xiahong Mountain auction to welcome all of you." I wouldn't dare." The nascent soul old man said proudly. "I was just bringing my disciples to train nearby and passed by the Xiahong Mountain auction house. Fellow Taoist, you don't have to be so polite." With that, the nascent soul old man looked at Xiao Hua and the others and asked curiously, "I wonder how these disciples of the Chanhe sect offended you, fellow Taoist?" Although the Yuhong hermit was unwilling to offend the power behind this old man, he was definitely not afraid of this old man. Therefore, he replied coldly, "This is my Xiahong Mountain's matter. It should have nothing to do with you, fellow Taoist." "Hee, that's true." The old man replied with a smile. Then, he asked again, "However, I wonder if you would mind if I asked them a few questions?" Please. The Yuhong hermit spat out a word. He stood there with his hands behind his back and looked coldly. I won't tell you my name now. The nascent soul old man did not even say his name to the Yuhong hermit. Now, how could he tell his name to Yu Hua and the other disciples who were only in the Golden Core realm? He looked at Xiao Hua and asked, I would like to ask if the so-called spirit root selection method that was sold here a while ago, is it your Chan sex cultivation method? Yes. Xiao Hua smiled. Does fellow Taoist have any questions? The old man did not immediately believe him and asked, can you let me see this spirit root selection method? Xiao Hua naturally did not have it, so he turned to Yu Hua and said, let this fellow Taoist have a look. Yu Hua did not dare to be negligent. She hurriedly took out several jade slips from her storage ring and respectfully handed them over. The nascent soul old man took the jade slips and looked at them. A smile appeared on his face. He thought for a moment and asked, I want these spirit root selection methods. How many crystals do I need? Normally, Yu Hua would definitely not ask for crystals and would definitely ask the nascent soul old man for help. However, today was different. She looked at Xiao Hua's calm appearance and said with a smile, 1 jade slip for 1 mid-grade crystal. Senior only needs to give this junior 4 pieces. Okay. The nascent soul old man was a little surprised at the cheap price of this cultivation method. However, he did not hesitate and ordered the disciple next to him to give her 4 mid-grade crystals. Seeing Yu Hua accept the crystals, the nascent soul old man asked again, to tell you the truth, I have seen your Chan sex spirit root selection method before. I feel that although this cultivation method is incredible, it is also very practical. I have specially tested some disciples with it, and the results are very good. Of course. Yu Hua said proudly, my Chan sect uses this spirit root selection method to select disciples. Well, if that's the case, then this old man did not come here in vain. The nascent soul old man's smile deepened. He said, little friend, can you bring this old man to the Chan sect and pay a visit to your sect master? This. Yu Hua was a little hesitant. She asked in return, this junior has some matters to attend to. I'm afraid it's not good for me to return now. Does senior have any important matters? Fellow Taoist 1. Hermit Yuhong smiled. The Chan sect is not far from here. If fellow Taoist wants to go, I can send a disciple to take you there. Hearing Hermit Yuhong call him by his name, Old Man 1 was a bit unhappy. He looked at Hermit Yuhong and said, this old man has his own plans. This old man thanks fellow Taoist for your kindness. Old Man 1 thought for a moment and then said politely to Yu Hua, it's like this. This old man has seen your Chan sex spirit root selection method. I can also use this method to find suitable disciples with spirit roots. However, this old man feels that my current cultivation method is not suitable for these disciples, so this old man wants to ask if your Chan sect has such a cultivation method. This old man can pay the price your Chan sect wants. If that's the case, then senior doesn't need to go to Xingyin Ridge. Yu Hua was overjoyed. She waved the jade slip in her hand and smiled. This junior is selling the cultivation method senior mentioned. There's no special price. Each jade slip costs 10 mid-grade crystals. 10 mid-grade crystals. Old Man 1 was shocked and shouted, how is that possible? Are you talking about the cultivation method for spirit roots? Of course not. Hermit Yuhong coldly said, if there is such a cultivation method, how can it be sold for 10 mid-grade crystals? This old man has already seen it. This cultivation method is fake. Hermit Yuhong's words were firm and his gaze was cold as he looked at Old Man 1. Old Man 1 was startled. He looked around and seemed to understand something. When Yu Hua saw this, she didn't scream loudly. Instead, she calmly handed the jade slip to Old Man 1 and said, whether it is real or not, senior will know once you see it. Yu Hua's actions seemed very simple, but it forced Old Man 1 into a dilemma. Yuhong Mountain Hermit had already said that the cultivation method in the jade slip was fake. Even if Old Man Wen saw it, he wouldn't be able to say anything. Although Old Man Wen looked down on Hermit Yuhong, he didn't want to offend a spirit-severing cultivator. But if Old Man Wen didn't take the jade slip, then what was the point of everything he said before? Little friend, you're making this difficult for me. Old Man Wen rubbed his chin and smiled. This old man doesn't know what to choose. Although Yu Hua was a golden core cultivator, she was no longer as timid as before. She replied in a neither haughty nor humble manner, Senior wanted to see the spiritual root selection method, so I gave it to Senior. Senior wanted to see the spiritual root cultivation method, so I gave it to Senior. Whether Senior wants to see it or not, whether Senior can distinguish it or not, and whether Senior dares to tell the truth, that's up to Senior. P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe at Chidian. Vote for it, give it a gift, and... Chapter 4899. Yuehua kept saying that she didn't dare to make things difficult for them, but her words had the meaning of, do you dare or not? Not only did Old Man Wen understand, but even the cultivators on Mount Yuhong and the rest of the cultivators knew clearly in their hearts. Half of the Qi refinement cultivators present were confused, but they were like ordinary people and liked to watch a show. Although they didn't dare to offend Yuhong Mountain, they liked to see others offend Yuhong Mountain, especially a nascent soul cultivator who didn't put Yuhong Mountain in his eyes. Although he wasn't the center of attention, Old Man Wen's hesitation gradually disappeared. He smiled and took the jade slip. This old man wants to see what kind of outstanding Qi refinement cultivation method a small Chanha sect can modify. Yuhong Mountain's face sank and asked, fellow Taoist, are you sure you want to see it? Old Man Wen smiled and replied, this old man already has the jade slip in my hand. How can I not see it? This old man will listen to the explanation. Yuhong Mountain's response was followed by another step to Old Man Wen's feet. Because he was already prepared, Old Man Wen's expression didn't change as he looked through the jade slip. This disappointed the Qi refinement cultivators. How is it? Seeing Old Man Wen put down the jade slip, Yuhong Mountain smiled. This old man is right? Although Yuehua didn't expect a miracle, she still stared at Old Man Wen without blinking. She hoped that she would hear the truth from his mouth. Old Man Wen faintly smiled and glanced at Hermit Yuhong. Just as he was about to speak, a low rumbling sound came from the arm of a tall disciple behind him. That disciple didn't hesitate at all. He closed his eyes and sent his divine sense into his arm. His face was filled with absolute respect. Not to mention that disciple, even the disciples near that disciple, although they didn't know what that disciple had heard, all straightened their backs and became even more respectful than before. Since all the disciples were like this, Old Master Wen was naturally no exception. He stopped and the smile on his face disappeared as he waited for the disciple to speak. In the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the disciple withdrew his spiritual sense and lowered his arm before sending a voice transmission to Old Man Wen. Old Man Wen had a look of surprise on his face. He nodded, indicating that he understood, and then looked at Yuehua. However, Old Man Wen didn't say anything and seemed to be thinking about something. Yuehua didn't understand, but she didn't avoid it. Her eyes were like lightning as she met the old man's aggressive gaze. Being Yuhong Mountain was a little impatient and urged, fellow Taoist, Old Man Wen raised his hand to signal the Yuhong Mountain people to shut up. He then transmitted his voice to Yuehua, little friend, this old man would like to ask you a question. Yuehua sneered and said, Senior, you can ask me anything. I'll tell you everything I know. Junior isn't like some cultivators who act one way in front of you and another behind your back, always engaging in some shady business like robbers and prostitutes. With that said, Yuehua swept her gaze across Hermit Yuhong. Hermit Yuhong was furious. It was clear that Yuehua was cursing him indirectly. She was clearly planning to destroy both jade and stone. Damn it. Unfortunately, before Hermit Yuhong could get angry, the female cultivator immediately scolded, You don't want to live anymore? How can you speak to my granduncle like that? Oh. Yue Hua was startled. She didn't know if this female cultivator was helping her or scolding her. Fortunately, Old Man Wen heard this and smiled. This old man's question is actually very simple. Because this spirit root selection technique is very miraculous. Based on my deduction, this spirit root selection technique is definitely not something your Chanhe sect can create. So this old man wants to ask, do you know where your sect master obtained this secret method? Old Man Wen wanted to see what Old Man Wen's goal was. At the same time, he wanted to see what Old Man Wen was up to. Xiaohua had no choice but to step forward. However, before he could take a step, Yue Hua, who was already prepared, said with a smile, Senior, what you want to know is very simple. But this junior wants to ask you whether this junior's cultivation method is real or not. Cough cough. Old Man Wen coughed a few times and smiled. Little friend, if you don't say it, this old man can go to Xingyin Ridge and ask your sect master, damn, this old fox. Xiaohua smiled and cursed. You don't need to go to Xingyin Ridge. That spirit root selection method is eyes. Ah. Old Man Wen was shocked. Even Hermit Yuhong's eyelids jumped. Everyone's gaze landed on Xiaohua. After Old Man Wen thought about Xiaohua's answer, he cautiously probed. Then. Fellow Taoist, is this selection method your own? Or did you get it from somewhere else? Then. Fellow Taoist, I want to ask you, is the qi refinement method in your hand real or fake? Or is it fake? Xiaohua asked with a smile. Old Man Wen narrowed his eyes and replied, so what if it's real or fake? If it's real, then it's real. If it's fake, then it's fake. The smile on Xiaohua's face gradually disappeared as he replied, this poor Taoist only wants to hear one sentence from you. Is this old man's words very important? Old Man Wen still wanted to evade. Xiaohua didn't give him any leeway and replied, of course it's important. Your words will determine whether what you want is the truth or a lie. Cough cough. Hermit Yuhong coughed a few times and smiled. Forgive this old man for being blind, but where is this fellow Taoist from? My Chu Pu Immortal Alliance doesn't seem to have someone like fellow Taoist. Hermit Yuhong. Xiaohua said indifferently. Chu Pu Immortal Alliance is so big and has so many nascent soul cultivators. Could it be that you can recognize all of them? Hermit Yuhong laughed. Fellow Taoist is right, this old man can recognize all of them. With that, Hermit Yuhong raised his hand and pointed to a high platform at the side of the hall. Since the spiritual root selection method is fellow Taoists, then this modified cultivation method should also be fellow Taoists, right? This old man said that the cultivation method is fake, but you yourself think it's real. Right now, there's this fellow Taoist from afar here. You and I will go to the warning platform to check and ask this fellow Taoist to be a witness so that you can give up. TCH. Yu Hua sneered and replied, Hermit Yuhong, do you think we are fools? There are many people here and no one there. When we go to the warning platform, no one will know if we are killed by you. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a month, vote for a recommendation, collect, reward, and thank all forms of support. Chapter 4900. If this old man wanted to make a move, why would I waste so much time with you? Hermit Yuhong said proudly, if this old man wanted to kill all of you, even though there are so many people here, who can stop this old man? Moreover, this fellow Taoist is a famous figure from afar. To be honest, he has more weight than all the cultivators in the hall. Senior. Yue Hua hesitated and turned to look at Xiaohua. Xiaohua didn't hesitate and smiled, then let's listen to him. Alright, everyone, please. Hermit Yuhong wasn't surprised by Xiaohua's choice. Instead, he smiled and gestured to Xiaohua. Before he stepped forward, he gave Old Man Wen a meaningful look. Hermit Yuhong was the first to lead the group of Golden Core disciples to land on the high platform. The disciples who were standing guard on the high platform hurriedly flew down. Once the few Golden Core disciples had finished setting up the high platform, Hermit Yuhong sat on a jade chair and calmly looked at everyone. Let's go. Xiao Hua ignored Old Man Wen and flew up the high platform with Yue Hua and the others. At this time, Xiao Hua was already able to use simple flying techniques. No one could see anything from his magic power. Granduncle. A few disciples whispered, this Hermit Yuhong has some impure intentions. Junior won't go up. We'll be on guard below. Hee hee. Hermit Yuhong smiled and said, I just want to see what he's selling in his gourd. You all go up as well. In this auction, it's the same no matter where you are. Yes, Granduncle. The disciples agreed and flew up the high platform with Old Man Wen. The high platform didn't look big from below, but when Xiao Hua and the others landed on it, they realized that there were dozens of people on the high platform. It didn't feel crowded at all. Moreover, there didn't seem to be any restrictions on the high platform. The gradually rising noise in the hall and the gazes of the cultivators looking at them were clear. Seeing everyone land on the high platform, Hermit Yuhong's heart calmed down. He smiled and raised his hand to Old Man Wen, fellow Taoist Wen, please sit, oh? Old Man Wen looked at Xiao Hua, who was still standing, and seemed to understand something. He smiled and said, Hermit, there's no need to be so polite. Since you're here, you don't need me to be a witness. If you have something to say, please. Good. Hermit Yuhong clapped and said, I like straightforward people like fellow Taoist. Since that's the case, I'll make it clear. I want all the methods of selecting spiritual roots and all the methods of cultivating spiritual roots. If that's the case, then it's easy. Old Man Wen also smiled. Then my Wen family wants him. Taoist, are you sure? Hermit Yuhong asked, didn't this unknown Taoist not say how he obtained this cultivation technique? Are you sure he modified it? Taoist. Hermit Yuhong nodded. I just want to remind Taoist that this Qi refinement technique is very mysterious. It's definitely not something a nascent soul cultivator can modify. I'm afraid that even a spirit-severing cultivator wouldn't be able to modify it. Old Man Wen replied. He looked at Xiao Hua and the others and said, since things have come to this, I'm willing to do some things that I usually don't want to do. Since fellow Taoist has already made his choice, then I'm speechless. As long as fellow Taoist is not afraid of being cheated. Hermit Yuhong shrugged and looked at Xiao Hua. You can take out your techniques now. Xiao Hua looked at Yue Hua and ordered without hesitation, give it to them. Yes, senior. Yue Hua felt wronged, but she still took out the jade slips from her storage ring. Hermit Yuhong was not satisfied. He looked at Lu Qingyu and Nuo Yeqing and said, where are the storage rings of these two little friends? Lu Qingyu said angrily, we've already taken out our techniques. Senior, don't push your luck. Xiao Hua waved his hand and said, Qingyu, give it to them. Give your storage rings to them. Yes, senior. Lu Qingyu didn't understand. He bit his lip, but still took out his storage ring and threw it to the golden core cultivator next to him. Yue Hua and Nuo Yeqing didn't say anything. They took off their storage rings and handed them over without hesitation. As disciples of small sects, they clearly knew that when comparing their lives to their storage rings, their lives were naturally more important. A wise man submits to circumstances. Fellow Taoist is indeed very good at it. Hermit Yuhong laughed as if he was mocking and praising. Seeing that Xiao Hua and the others were very tactful, Old Man Wen was secretly happy and asked Hermit Yuhong, fellow Taoist, can we leave now? Hermit Yuhong nodded. Of course. You and I both got what we needed. I don't want to offend the Wen clan, so we can leave. Very good. Old Man Wen cupped his hands and said, I'm very satisfied with today's trip to Xiahong Mountain. When I return, I'll definitely report it to the clan head. In the future, if fellow Taoist passes by my Wen clan, there's no harm in coming to Wen Clan as a guest. Huh, well said, well said. Hermit Yuhong stood up and cupped his hands. I hope fellow Taoist will have the chance to come to my Siahong mountain again in the future. I came and went in a hurry today and didn't properly entertain you. After bidding farewell, Old Man Wen said to Xiao Hua and the others, everyone, please follow. Unfortunately, before Old Man Wen could finish speaking, the entire high platform began to shake. Hundreds of green pillars of light flashed across the space several hundred meters to the left of the high platform. These pillars of light were like a whirlwind that swept towards Xiao Hua and the others from all over the high platform. Moreover, within these green pillars of light, strands of black and white light blossomed like an epiphyllum. As the halos blossomed, layers of runes rushed out of the void like waves and landed on everyone's bodies. Damn it. Old Man Wen only felt his body tighten. Where the runes landed, not only was his physical body imprisoned, even his nascent soul was restrained. How could Old Man Wen not know that he had fallen into Hermit Yuhong's trap? He angrily cursed and was about to slap his own head. At the same time, a black and white halo flashed and a crack appeared in the void. A heavy pressure descended from the sky and with a flash of light on the stage, Old Man Wen and the others were teleported out. However, after the light and shadow flashed, ripples appeared on the high platform again. One by one, lifelike phantoms appeared in an instant. It was no different from the previous one. Moreover, the strange thing was that Old Man Wen led Xiao Hua and the others in a very courteous manner as they bid farewell to Hermit Yuhong. Then, they flew into a door at the top of the hall and disappeared in an instant. Everyone. When Xiao Hua and the others' phantoms disappeared, Hermit Yuhong waved his hand. A golden core cultivator walked to the front of the platform and said, my master originally wanted to punish the people of the Chanhe sect, but for the sake of that fellow Taoist, he didn't pursue the matter. The Chanhe sect has already left behind the cultivation method. My master will carefully refine it and then sell the real cultivation method at the Jingping Hall. Please wait for the news. Seeing the farce come to an end like this, the crowd of qi condensation cultivators had their suspicions, but there was nothing they could do. Muttering among themselves, they slowly dispersed. In just the time it took to brew a cup of tea, the square that was filled with people earlier had become sparse. Perhaps in a few days, no one would remember what happened here today. Xiao Hua and the others had fallen into Hermit Yuhong's trap and were sent out of the platform. Old Man Wen saw the light flicker and the heavy pressure disappear. He secretly prepared to counterattack. However, before the pressure of the teleportation disappeared, a huge force appeared in the air and dozens of 30-meter-wide vortexes appeared. Aside from Old Man Wen, none of the cultivators were able to resist the suction force of the vortexes and were sucked in. Old Man Wen regretted it and opened his mouth. A pillar of green light shot out and a fist-sized golden hammer fell into the air. When the hammer fell into the air, the space around it began to distort. Old Man Wen chanted, "Go!" The golden hammer rushed above Old Man Wen's head and with a loud bang, the vortex collapsed. Fellow cultivator Wen is being naughty. Hermit Yuhong's laughter came from the vortex. With a flash of light, Hermit Yuhong appeared. Hermit Yuhong grabbed with his hand and the entire space rumbled. A several-meter-wide sealing force appeared and firmly grabbed the golden hammer. Swoosh! A strange whirlpool appeared under Old Man Wen and sucked him in before he could even struggle. Clap, clap. Hermit Yuhong clapped his hands lightly, and several waves of magic power rushed into the void. After the vortex transformed, the figures of dozens of imprisoned cultivators were revealed. Damn it! The female cultivator named Jing Er cursed, "You dare to plot against us? You really don't want to live. Of course this old man wants to live. And I want to live freely." Hermit Yuhong shrugged and replied elegantly, "This old man's auction house has been open in Siahong Mountain for over 1,000 years. I've seen many disciples of aristocratic families who think too highly of themselves like you. It doesn't matter if your family is here or not." Hee hee. Old Man Wen laughed, "Hermit Yuhong, this old man advises you to stop. Not all of my Wen family's disciples are here. Also, this old man will tell you the truth. My family head also knows that we are here. You also saw the message from before. Good boy, you scared me to death. Hermit Yuhong patted his chest and said, it's just a Zeech and Immortal Alliance's Wen family. It's at least 40 million li away from my Xiahong mountain. You want to use a few words to intimidate this old man? Do you think this old man is a chi refinement brat that hasn't experienced anything? P.S. Fellow cultivators who like this book, please subscribe at Chidian. Vote a month, vote a recommendation vote, collect a gift, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 4901. Old Man Wen was shocked. He knew that he had been too arrogant and underestimated Yuhong Mountain's methods. He also underestimated Yuhong Mountain's ruthlessness. However, he still didn't understand how things had developed to this point. Everything before, wasn't it fine? Hermit Yuhong. Old Man Wen narrowed his eyes and looked at Hermit Yuhong. He said word by word, I don't understand. I only took the disciples of the Chan sect away and they left behind their cultivation methods. Why did you still attack? Even if you're not afraid of my Wen family. I don't understand. You're only a spirit-severing cultivator. With your Xiahong Mountain's power, how could you be a match for my Wen family? Ha ha ha, are you confused? Yuhong Mountain looked at the famous family's disciple being played in the palm of his hand. He felt a rare sense of satisfaction and laughed wildly. Fellow Daoist, you've underestimated the cultivation method I brought. Xiaohua seemed to have also been restrained by the Yuhong Mountain people and was unable to move. At this moment, he spoke indifferently. Old Man Wen was even more confused and asked, didn't you already give him the cultivation method? If it was Yuehua from before, she would be as confused as Old Man Wen. However, after hearing Xiaohua's explanation, she already understood the meaning of the cultivation method. She couldn't help but say, Senior, you're a family's disciple. Of course you only want to take the cultivation method back to the Wen family. But if you were to broaden your horizons, what if you were to give this cultivation method to even more sects? Yuehua's words exposed the truth and Old Man Wen immediately understood. He sucked in a breath of cold air and said, I understand. Yuhong Mountain, you want to give this cultivation method to the Chu Pu Immortal Alliance. No, you want to give this cultivation method to the Dao Alliance. Damn it, no wonder you're not afraid of my Wen family's revenge. No wonder you want to kill us all. Dao Alliance? Of course, Yuehua's vision wasn't as high as Old Man Wen's. She was just reminding Old Man Wen, but Old Man Wen was able to guess the intentions of Yuhong Mountain Man. His words shocked Yuehua. Yuhong Mountain clapped and said, there are indeed many smart people in this world. Moreover, there were more intelligent people in aristocratic families. Others only pointed it out a little, but you actually guessed this old man's plan in an instant. Since all of you already know about it, then I won't hide it from you. The method to select and cultivate spiritual roots is simply too important. All of you only know how to exchange these for crystals, but you don't know what you'll get if you offer these things to the Dao Alliance. Since you don't know, then this old man will do it for you. However, since I'm going to give this to the Dao Alliance, there's no need for you to exist. Chan He sect. Lu Qingyu's face was pale as he immediately thought of Chan He sect. Sure enough, the Yuhong Mountain Man looked at Xiaohua and the others and said, as for the Chan He sect, you don't have to worry. I heard that Lu Hanhuan just destroyed the Flying Shadow sect. The sect master of the Flying Shadow sect had many friends when he was alive. I think his friends will avenge him, right? Shameless bastard. Old Man Wen was furious. His body shined with a green light and the light rushed out from his dantian. It quickly penetrated his body and condensed at the top of his head. Hong. A clear sound came from the top of Old Man Wen's head. Then a pillar of light shot into the sky and a 5-foot nascent soul wearing spirit armor flew out. This nascent soul held a golden red spear that was a few feet long. As it landed in the air, a sorrowful aura filled the area. Ha ha ha. Seeing the golden red spear tremble and ready to stab at him, the Yuhong mountain man laughed and said, "You're only a nascent soul cultivator and you dare to be arrogant in front of this old man? Today, I'll let you see. So what if you're from a cultivation family? So what if you're from a cultivation sect? In front of strength, everything is nothing." As he spoke, Hermit Yuhong didn't activate any divine abilities. He merely waved his sleeves. Woo! A chilly whirlwind appeared out of thin air, and a strange beast that was only a foot long flew out. This beast was like a monkey. Its entire body was black and there were countless strange runes on its almost hairless body. The rune gave off a dark green luster as the beast appeared. As the luster flashed, the beast's body began to grow rapidly. In just a few breaths of time, the beast grew to several dozen feet. However, what shocked Old Man Wen was that although it grew, its body became thinner and didn't have the muscles of a normal beast. Moreover, the beast's eyes released a ghostly light. When his nascent soul saw the beast, it couldn't help but feel fear. Soul-devouring monkey? A surprised voice came from the distance. Xiao Hua could clearly hear that it was Nua Yeching's voice. The soul-devouring monkey's body condensed and it bared its fangs in excitement. Then it turned to look at the nascent soul. Not good. Old Man Wen was shocked and wanted to withdraw his nascent soul before it could use any spells. Unfortunately, at this moment, the soul-devouring monkey opened its mouth and let out a few roars. Its body drew a strange arc in the air and immediately pounced at the nascent soul. Before the beast could get close, its aura had already spread and caused Old Man Wen's nascent soul to feel powerless. Damn it! This old man will kill you. Seeing that the nascent soul was showing signs of collapsing and that he couldn't control it, Old Man Wen was shocked. He let out a scream and spat out a mouthful of blood onto the nascent soul. The nascent soul's eyes released a bloody light. At this moment, a rather dull voice sounded, "Sigh, forget it. Fellow Daoist one, you don't have to probe any further. Since we've already spoken up to this point, this humble Daoist already knows the intentions of the people of Mount Yuhong. He has operated the auction house of Mount Yuhong for 1,000 years. He must have done many such heinous things. Today, let him pay the price for his mistakes." Ah! Hermit Yuhong was astonished and looked at Xiao Hua in disbelief. He only saw Xiao Hua's hands move gently. Crack, crack, crack. The shackles binding Xiao Hua shattered as though they were real ropes. It didn't take much effort at all. Then Xiao Hua opened his mouth and let out a roar, "Break." The soul-devouring monkey's body trembled as if it had met an invincible king. Its body quickly shrunk, and not only did it shrink to a few feet, it even knelt in the air and didn't dare to move. Its body was still trembling uncontrollably. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe at Qidian, vote for it, give it a tip, and with just one punch, everything was over. A fist could shatter magic treasures, but could a fist shatter a nascent soul? This was simply unimaginable. While everyone was in a daze, Xiao Hua raised his hand again and broke Lu Qingyu's restriction. Then, Xiao Hua looked at Old Man Wen and smiled, "This old man can save you, but you have to help this old man do something. Senior has already saved this junior." Old Man Wen did not dare to be negligent and quickly said with a smile, "Hee, you're quite tactful." Xiao Hua raised his hand again and tore Old Man Wen's restriction apart. He said, "You can deal with Hermit Yuhong as you wish. Give this old man 70% of Xia Hong Mountain's profit. Hee, as long as Senior nods, my Wen family will only take 20%. Old Man Wen was overjoyed and smiled, "Senior, please wait here for a moment. This junior will be back soon." Xiao Hua nodded. He looked around and raised his hand to point at the void. Pa! Like a bubble bursting, the void in front of everyone collapsed, revealing a magnificent palace. Xiaohua looked at the Yuhong mountain man who had fallen to the ground like a dead dog. Disgust appeared in his eyes. He flew to the high platform at the head of the hall and sat down firmly. Yuehua, Lu Qingyu, and Nuo Yeqing also flew down. Old Man Wen ordered a few disciples to accompany them below the high platform. He raised his hand and grabbed Hermit Yuhong in his hand. He bowed slightly to Xiaohua and flew out. After the space shattered, the soul-devouring monkey naturally fell from the array. At this moment, it was still trembling in fear and curled up into a ball in the air. Xiaohua looked at the soul-devouring monkey, then looked at Nuo Yeqing, and muttered in his heart. Although Xiaohua didn't know the name of the soul-devouring monkey, he already knew that this soul-devouring monkey wasn't a demonic beast, but a rare soul beast. He did not understand how Nuo Yeqing, who was in Foundation establishment, knew. Nuo Yeqing saw that Xiaohua was paying attention to her, so she simply walked forward and bowed. Senior, can you give this soul-devouring monkey to this junior? Yeqing, you seem to have a lot of things that you haven't told this old man. Xiaohua smiled. Lu Qingyu also glared at Nuo Yeqing and said, Little brat, how many secrets are you hiding from this master? Senior Zhang, master. Nuo Yeqing smiled bitterly and said, It's not the time to explain this matter. If there is a chance, this disciple will definitely report it. I hope that the two seniors will not force me. Hearing Lu Qingyu berate Nuo Yeqing, Xiaohua immediately thought of his master's helplessness. Wasn't it because of this that he hid his cultivation from his master? Therefore, Xiaohua did not even think and replied, Okay. As long as you feel that you have the ability to bear this secret, then bear it yourself. There's no need to report it to us. He, master, you see, even Senior Zhang said so. Nuo Yeqing said to Lu Qingyu with a mischievous smile. This old man is so angry. Lu Qingyu did not know whether to laugh or cry. He looked at Xiaohua and said, Senior spoils him too much. He. Xiaohua did not say much and shouted at the soul-devouring monkey, Evil creature, come here. The soul-devouring monkey trembled and hurriedly flew over, landing pitifully in front of Xiaohua. Xiaohua pointed at Nuo Yeqing and said, This is your new master, you will follow him from now on. This old man knows that you must have helped the evildoers before, follow your new master in the future. At this point, Xiaohua could not help but secretly laugh. How does this soul beast know how to help the evildoers? What's the use of saying so much to him? It's better to just believe Nuo Yeqing. Go. Xiaohua did not say anything and just said to Nuo Yeqing. The soul-devouring monkey was a soul beast. Although Xiaohua did not use the green seal text, his voice also had the power of the soul. After the soul-devouring monkey heard it, it obediently waved its little paw and landed in front of Nuo Yeqing. Nuo Yeqing hugged the soul beast with both hands. It was very strange. The soul-devouring monkey liked Nuo Yeqing very much. It was somewhat resistant to Nuo Yeqing's hands, but when Nuo Yeqing hugged it, it actually tilted in Nuo Yeqing's arms and lay down. I'm afraid this strange beast is fated with you. Xiaohua said seriously, I hope that you can use this strange beast to do the things you like to do, and I also hope that these things are what this old man wants to see. Even if this old man can't see you in the future, I hope that the things you do will be worthy of your conscience. Yes, this junior understands. But please rest assured, senior. Nuo Yeqing happily bowed and kowtowed. Afterwards, Xiaohua sat cross-legged on the jade chair and closed his eyes to meditate. Lu Qingyu guarded Xiaohua's side while Nuo Yeqing hid to the side and played with the soul-devouring monkey. Yuehua walked over and whispered something to the Wen family disciple. Contrary to Xiaohua's expectations, Old Man Wen went out for 2 hours and did not return. Lu Qingyu was somewhat worried and whispered, Senior, should this junior go out and take a look? No need. Xiaohua did not open his eyes and replied, Do not doubt the people you use, do not use those you doubt. Yes. Lu Qingyu did not dare to say anything else. Then, after waiting for another hour, Old Man Wen hurriedly entered the main hall alone. The old man walked to the bottom of the high platform and bowed. Junior Wenjin greets Senior. Xiaohua opened his eyes and asked, thank you for your hard work. How did it go? Reporting to Senior. Wenjin hurriedly took out a dozen thumb-sized storage rings and respectfully handed them over. He replied, this is what I found in the cave residence of the Yuhong Mountain Man. Please check and accept it. This old man will not look carefully. Take what you should take and give the rest to this old man. Xiaohua waved his hand and said. Yes. Wenjin took out 2 storage rings and handed the majority of the storage rings to Xiaohua. You've given this old man too much. Xiaohua said with a smile. No. Wenjin said with a smile, this junior will only give Senior a little, not a lot. Senior, please take them first and listen to this junior's explanation. All right. Xiaohua was not polite. He raised his hand and threw 3 storage rings to Nua Yeqing, Lu Qingyu, and Yu Hua. He kept the rest. The scale of Xiahong Mountain's auction house is beyond this junior's expectations. The wealth of Yuhong Mountain's people is even more beyond this junior's expectations. Wenjin said in a timely manner, previously, this junior was only following Senior's instructions and swept away all of Yuhong Mountain's people's things. However, when this junior saw Yuhong Mountain's people's arrangements, this junior had another idea. That's why this junior wasted so much time. Oh. Do you want to take over this auction house? Xiaohua said with a smile. Wenjin nodded and said, Senior is right. This Xiahong Mountain's auction house has existed for thousands of years and has always been very prosperous. Even though Yuhong Mountain's people are no longer here, this auction house should still be here. Therefore, this junior wants to use Senior's name and my Wen family's name to continue operating this auction house. Of course, this junior does not dare to make a decision based on Senior's proportion. After obtaining Senior's consent, this junior will report to my family's head. Wenjin. Xiaohua's lips curled into a light smile. He looked at Old Man Wen and said, it seems that you haven't told this old man about your background yet, right? P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote, vote for a recommendation vote, collect a gift, and thank you for all forms of support. Chapter 4903. Io, this is my negligence. Wenjin turned to look at the disciples of the Wen clan. The disciples of the Wen clan also looked at Yuehua innocently. They didn't dare to tell Yuehua everything about the Wen clan. But Yuehua didn't tell Xiaohua. Yuehua hurriedly said, I don't blame Senior Wen. It's all my fault for not telling Senior Zhang everything. Senior. Wenjin naturally wouldn't blame Yuehua. He smiled and said, we are disciples of the Wen clan of the Water Cloud Nation. Our clan belongs to the Purple Chin Immortal Alliance of the Tao Alliance. Our clan leader is a Mahayana realm cultivator named Wen Qingfan. This time, we brought some juniors and nephews to the edge of the Yi-Lin continent and were lucky enough to meet Senior. Let's not talk about the disciples' gains. With the Xiahong Mountain Auction House, we've already done a great service for the Wen clan. Oh, no, with Senior's spiritual root selection method, we've already done 2 great services. At this point, Wenjin carefully said, Senior, how should I address you? After we finish our discussion, I still have to send a message to the clan leader. My name is Zhang Xiaohua. Xiaohua smiled and said, as for my Taoist name, we'll talk about it later. Yes, Junior understands. Wenjin heard this rustic name and didn't dare to be disrespectful. He respectfully replied, Junior still has one more thing to ask Senior Zhang. Xiaohua said meaningfully, let's discuss the Xiahong Mountain auction house first before we talk about anything else. It's like this. Wenjin hurriedly explained, Junior has passed on Senior's spiritual root selection method to the clan. The clan leader is very interested in this method. Just now, when Junior was in the auction house, the clan leader sent a message asking Junior to invite Senior to Arwen clan. Therefore, Junior feels that Junior should discuss this matter with Senior first. As for the specific details, Senior can discuss it directly with the clan leader when Senior arrives. If I don't go, won't there be no way to discuss it? Xiao Hua said with a smile. This. Wen Zhen was a little embarrassed and hurriedly replied, Junior has no intention of threatening Senior. It's just that, Arwen clan has encountered some problems in the selection of disciples and cultivation methods. I'm sure our clan head would like to invite you over to discuss this. Huh, it's fine. I'll consider this matter before answering you. Xiao Hua flicked his sleeve and said, however, I won't be participating in the matter of the Grand Xia Mountain Auction Arena. If you feel that the Wen clan is too far away, why don't you borrow the power of the Chanhe sect? They are the local tyrants and have the intention to develop in this area. If your Wen clan joins forces with the Chanhe sect, it should be suitable. Chanhe sect. Wen Zhen was a little hesitant. However, after a moment, he smiled and said, Senior, you have a good idea. Although the Chanhe sect isn't strong, they don't have to be too strong with my Wen clan as their backing. If they were too strong, it would make the Wen clan fearful. With them taking the lead to manage the Xia Hong Mountain auction house and my Wen clan handling the matters behind the scenes, it would be a win-win situation. I'll listen to you, Senior. I'll leave my Wen family's disciples at the auction. I'll also send disciples to the Chanhe sect to discuss the cooperation with them before I leave. Of course, when Senior Zhang arrives at the Wen family, you can mention it to the family head. That would be the best. Don't worry. Xiao Hua nodded. Although I'm not a disciple of the Chanhe sect, I have some fate with the Chanhe sect. The disciples that I serve are also from the Chanhe sect. Why don't I help the Chanhe sect? Senior, it's the Chanhe sect's fortune to remind us. Wen Zhen smiled and said, I'll go make the arrangements now. Senior, please reconsider our family head's invitation. After Wen Zhen finished speaking, he hurriedly left. This time, he took all the Wen family's disciples with him, leaving only Xiao Hua and the others in the hall. Senior. Once Wen Zhen left, Yu Hua said softly, it's all my fault. What's your fault? Xiao Hua smiled and waved his hand. I never planned to go to the Purple Chin Immortal Alliance. He can do whatever he wants. Senior, in my opinion, why don't you consider making a trip to the Wen clan? Lu Qingyu said with a smile. I've already asked Senior Sister Yu. Although the Water Cloud Nation isn't on the transportation route that Senior wants to take, the Wen clan is in the center of the Yi-Lin continent. It's not too far away from the transportation route. With a Wen clan disciple as a guide, we don't need to ask around. We don't need to spend any crystals to take the transportation array. Isn't that better than anything else? Junior brother Lu. Yu Hua said angrily. We just escaped from the wolf's den of the Xia Hong Mountain auction house, and you want to throw yourself into the tiger's den of the Wen clan? Do you want to die? Although Wen Zhen looks amiable, if it wasn't for their family head's message, how could he possibly care about our lives? Also, didn't Senior Zhang secretly point it out just now? Wen Zhen isn't stupid. He was sure that Senior Zhang had a backup plan, so he took a gamble. That's why he went to the warning platform without hesitation. Seeing Yu Hua angry like a tigress, Lu Qingyu shrunk his neck and said, I just want to be lazy and save some crystals. If Senior Sister doesn't agree, just pretend I didn't say anything. Look at the crystals in the storage ring yourself. Yu Hua glared at Lu Qingyu and said, those crystals are more than what my Chanhe clan has accumulated for generations. Lu Qingyu didn't dare to say more, but he still muttered, I'm used to being poor, so I'll save as much as I can, stingy. Yu Hua glared at Lu Qingyu with disdain, but she knew in her heart that if she wasn't worried about Xiao Hua's safety, she might have agreed to Lu Qingyu's suggestion. Xiao Hua looked at the two talking, and his heart was very warm. It was as if he could see his disciples quarreling, and his mood that was affected by the ugliness of the Yuhong mountain people disappeared. He naturally had his own plans. The most important thing for him now was to rush to the Wu Meng mountain range and find the passage to the Xiaoyu continent. However, his cultivation had not recovered. Even if he rushed to the Wu Meng mountain range, he wouldn't be able to enter at will. So his most important thing was to recover his cultivation. With his experience in the 10,000 demon realm, it would be difficult for him to recover his strength in more than 10 years. In the Yilin continent where the Dao sects were extremely prosperous, it was enough for him to rush to the Wu Meng mountain range from the Feng Yan kingdom. Lu Qingyu's words made Xiao Hua's heart tremble. He smiled and said, "Qingyu is right, the landlord doesn't have any extra food. Why don't we go with Wenjun? Anyway, the Xiahong Mountain Auction House will be operated by the Chan He clan and the Wen clan in the future. If this old man doesn't go to the Wen clan, how can the Wen clan cooperate with the Chan He clan? Senior, the Wen clan's patriarch is a Mahayana cultivator." Yu Hua stomped her feet and complained, "If the Wen clan has bad intentions, we won't even be enough to fill the gap between their teeth." Xiao Hua's face turned cold, and he pretended to be serious. "Oh, yes. A Mahayana cultivator, they won't even be enough to fill the gap between my teeth. Why should this old man be afraid of them?" "That's right." Yu Hua took the opportunity to smile. However, just as she agreed, she was stunned. She opened her mouth in surprise and looked at Xiao Hua. Only then did she understand the meaning of Xiao Hua's words. Not to mention Yu Hua, even Lu Qingyu and Nuo Yeqing were shocked. They knew that Xiao Hua was a senior expert, but they only thought that Xiao Hua was a void refinement cultivator, and at most, a unity stage cultivator was the peak. They never thought that Xiao Hua was actually a tribulation passing cultivator. A tribulation passing cultivator, this was something they dreamed of meeting. Now, this tribulation passing cultivator was standing in front of them with a smile on his face. "Shoo." Xiao Hua put a finger to his mouth and whispered, "Keep a low profile, keep a low profile. This old man has lost all his cultivation and is gradually recovering. Don't let this old man's enemies know." Yes, this junior understands." Yu Hua hurriedly answered and looked around cautiously. Lu Qingyu hurriedly reminded, "Senior, since your cultivation hasn't recovered, it's better for us not to go to the Wen clan. Isn't it just some crystal stones? We can afford it. If we go to the Wen clan from here, how long will it take?" Xiao Hua asked. This junior has already asked the Wen clan's disciples. "If we use the teleportation formation, it will take dozens of days." Yu Hua hurriedly replied, "If we use the flying boat, it will take several months. However, I heard from the Wen clan's disciples that their experiential learning hasn't ended yet, and they may need to use the flying boat to return. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a reward, and thank you for all kinds of support." Chapter 4904. Very well. Xiao Hua made a decision. "Then let's take the flying boat. A few months will be enough for me to kill a grand ascension stage being." Hiss. Xiao Hua's voice wasn't loud, and it sounded very casual, but how many cultivators on the Yilin continent could say such words? These words shocked Yu Hua and the others even more than any other bold words. Nuo Yeqing couldn't help but sigh as she suggested again, "Senior, you're too awesome. Could you consider taking my master and uncle master as your disciples? Their cultivation is too weak. We'll talk about it later." Xiao Hua waved his hand with a smile. Many thanks, Senior." Lu Qingyu and Yu Hua were simply overjoyed. Facing the ferocious Xiao Hua, Yu Hua's previous inexplicable feelings had now turned into reverence. "Ha ha ha." Xiao Hua suddenly burst into laughter. Nuo Yeqing was puzzled. Senior, what are you laughing about? Hee, nothing. Xiaohua laughed as he waved his hand. This old man only thinks that there are only the three of us in this hall. This old man even told you, who are merely Jindan stage disciples, that this old man is a tribulation passing stage cultivator. You all even flattered me and said, that's right, we all believe that you are the number one expert in the Yilin continent. Everyone else is just mud. Tell me. Would the others laugh at us for being crazy? Hee, if others say we're crazy, then we're crazy. Yuhua replied. Isn't it fine as long as we believe in senior strength? In fact, it wasn't just Yuhua and Lu Qingyu who believed in him, Wenjun also believed in him. In less than an hour, Wenjun had already arranged the affairs of the Xiahong Mountain Auction Hall and returned to the hall. He was very uneasy as he waited for Xiaohua's decision. After Xiaohua asked about Wenjun's situation and informed him of his decision, Wenjun was ecstatic. This was because his thoughts were similar to Yuhua's. In the face of a grand ascension stage master of the Wen family, unless they had some kind of strength, they definitely wouldn't face him head-on. Wenjun had been thinking about how to persuade Xiaohua earlier. Seeing that Xiaohua had agreed, Wenjun didn't hesitate at all. He immediately urged his disciples to pack up and prepare to use the teleportation array to rush back to the Wen family in the shortest time possible. However, without waiting for Wenjun to order the Wen family disciples, Xiaohua smiled and told Wenjun his decision. Wenjun was at a loss. Not to mention other immortal cultivation sects, even in the Wen clan, as long as their strength and seniority were a bit higher than others would have to listen to their decisions. Even if it was unreasonable and unrealistic, others would still have to respect them and risk their lives. Who would be as easygoing as Xiaohua? Inconceivable. After Wenjun confirmed it over and over again, he happily saluted with his Dharma name. The disciples who didn't train continued to train while the disciples who completed their training stayed behind to manage the auction. After that, everyone boarded the Wen clan's flying ship and prepared to return to the Purple Chen Immortal Alliance's Wen clan. The Wen clan naturally wouldn't be as shabby as the Chanha sect. The flying ship that Wenjun released was actually similar to the thunder ship of the Imperial Thunder sect. Moreover, some of the Wen clan disciples who had demon pets didn't ride the thunder ship. Instead, they released their demon pets. One by one, the demon pets carried their master, spread their wings, and flew towards the place where the sun rose. The road to the Wen clan was very long. In the route that Wenjun had drawn earlier, there were also places where the Foundation Establishment and Golden Core disciples would train. At these places, Wenjun first stopped the flying ship, then asked Xiaohua for instructions. Finally, he let the Wen clan disciples leave the flying ship and go to the dangerous places to train. The Wen clan's flying ship was certainly more luxurious than the Chanha sect's flying ship. Even if Xiaohua didn't want to occupy it, he still occupied the largest quiet room. Different from what Wenjun thought, Xiaohua didn't ask about the flying ship's route at all, let alone the location of the training. All his reports were conveyed by Yuhua, and all the conveyances only had one reply, yes. If it weren't for the fact that Wenjun would ask Xiaohua for advice about his modified cultivation methods from time to time, he would almost think that the quiet room was completely a clay sculpture. After more than 10 days, the Wen clan's flying ship flew to a dense mountain forest and stopped again. Wenjun respectfully walked to the front of the quiet room and said, reporting to Senior Zhang, "This is the Purple Cypress Barren Forest. It's the place where the Wen clan disciples train." Before Wenjun could finish speaking, a layer of fish scale-shaped light suddenly appeared in the clear sky above the flying ship. As soon as the light appeared, the area around the flying ship was immediately imprisoned. At the same time, the fish scale-shaped light slowly pressed down, and clouds that looked like green lotuses appeared from the light. As soon as the clouds appeared, the ground began to become transparent. The clouds also appeared like reflections, emitting a pure white brilliance that had already covered the entire world. In this brilliance, whether it was the mountain peak, the trees, the flying ship, Wenjun, the moonlight, and so on, everything seemed to fade. First, they lost their color, then only the outline was left. Then, the outline disappeared, and the lines were annihilated. In the entire world, only Xiao Hua was left sitting cross-legged. What's going on? Xiao Hua's face was also filled with shock, and he looked at all this in confusion. When Wenjin reported, he was modifying a golden core cultivation method for a golden core with a golden spirit root. Just as he was about to answer Wenjin impatiently, he felt an unparalleled power of heaven and earth descend from the sky, completely imprisoning him. Not to mention that his body couldn't move, even his thoughts showed signs of being frozen. Just as Xiao Hua was puzzled, hundreds of millions of clouds began to churn, and a pure white brilliance began to transform. 9-colored auspicious lights surged from all directions, and when these auspicious lights landed in one place, a series of earth-shattering thunder rumbled, and a human figure that could split open the heavens and the earth appeared in the midst of the lightning. As soon as this human figure appeared, the surrounding space immediately distorted, and countless black and white flames madly fluttered like small snakes. At the same time, an aura that was 3 times more vast than the power of heaven and earth emanated from this human figure, sweeping through the sky. Tao Master. Xiao Hua's body couldn't move, and his thoughts were as slow as a snail's. However, when his gaze fell on this human figure, he couldn't see the appearance of this human figure, and an unimaginable thought immediately emerged in his mind out of thin air. This is my Tao Sex Tao Master. As soon as the thought of Tao Master came out, the appearance of the human figure became clearer. The Tao Master wore a Tao crown and a Tao robe, and the nameless talisman on the Tao robe seemed to be alive. This talisman swayed, and countless illusory images were born. Among the illusory images, there were dragons and phoenixes, or thunderbolts, or forests and swamps, but most of them were traces of Tao sect cultivators. The light and shadow of the Tao robe rushed to the sky, revealing the appearance of the Tao Master. Tao Master's face was very simple and unadorned, and his eyes contained the sun and the moon. On his face, which was like a full moon, a faint luster was emitted, and a vast and unparalleled will was transmitted into Xiao Hua's heart along with the luster. A yearning desire to worship involuntarily arose in Xiao Hua's heart. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua couldn't even move at this time. The figure of the Tao Master appeared, and his eyes turned slightly, and his gaze fell on Xiao Hua. Then, the Tao Master opened his mouth, and a voice that shook the world more than thunder resounded, "Good." Along with this voice, the Tao Master waved his right hand towards the sky, and the whole world distorted, turning into millions of light and shadow. Then, the Tao Master grabbed with his right hand, and these millions of light and shadow turned into millions of light spots that condensed in his hand, condensing into a light and shadow that looked like a seed. Then, the Tao Master stretched out his hand, and his big hand cut through space and time, and fell on Xiao Hua's head like the will of heaven and earth. The seed that seemed bigger than the sky turned into the size of a thumb, and fell on Xiao Hua's head. As the seed's light and shadow fell, millions of inexplicable sounds came from the void, and the mysteries of heaven and earth appeared in front of Xiao Hua's eyes. Xiao Hua's physical body also began to fade and melt in this light and shadow, and finally turned into an existence of lines. Ka 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 ka. The moment the seed touched the lines on Xiao Hua's head, countless thunderous sounds resounded, and it was as if an invisible lightning pen had touched Xiao Hua's head. Lightning spread, and the mysteries condensed, and the laws of heaven and earth turned solid and poured into Xiao Hua's body that had turned into lines. Wang wang wang. Along with the thunderous sounds, the inexplicable sounds became even louder, and countless strange light and shadows burned in the whole world like flames. Xiao Hua's outline that was originally more than 10 feet long began to slowly expand. Good. The Tao Master spat out another word. This voice was different from before, and it didn't shake the world. Instead, it was low and deep, as if sighing with emotion. However, along with this voice, the Tao Master's body began to shatter, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into millions of dust. However, this dust didn't scatter, and instead, along with the flickering light and shadow of the seed, it rushed into the seed like a myriad of streams returning to the origin. Bam bam bam. The sound of frying beans could be heard again. Cracks were appearing all over the seed's shadow. Tao seed. Seeing the seed crack into 3,000 folds, each of which revealed supreme mysteries, Xiaohua had an inexplicable thought in his heart. However, without waiting for this thought to disappear, the Tao seed swept past the outline of Xiaohua's body and fell into his lower dantian. However, where the Tao seed passed, Xiaohua's body that had been condensed with the laws of heaven and earth quickly condensed, just like before. Moreover, the various clones that had already appeared before also condensed into different bodies of laws within Xiaohua's body. The Mud Pill Palace, Middle Dantian, and Lower Dantian all appeared. In the end, the Tao seed fell into the head of Xiaohua's quasi-nine-tribulation scattered nascent soul. The Tao seed was originally going to fall into the body of the scattered nascent soul, but at this moment, with a soft sound, the primordial purple vapor hidden in his lower dantian suddenly appeared and fell into the Tao seed. Wang Wang. The Tao seed's original brilliance turned purple at this moment, and the entire Tao seed began to vibrate, and a strange fragrance came from within the Tao seed. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a month, vote for a recommendation, collect, reward, and thank all forms of support. Chapter 4905. The entire Tao seed began to swell in the midst of its vibrations. Rings of purple halos, as if breaking out of a cocoon, flashed out of the Tao seed. Moreover, these halos didn't dissipate after rushing out of the Tao seed. Instead, they condensed into rings, clouds, or granules, and scattered around the Tao seed. What was strange was not just the Tao seed. When the fragrance spread out, Xiaohua's scattered nascent souls began to swell rapidly. Even the hundreds of scattered nascent souls that had never been revealed gradually appeared and scattered around Xiaohua's scattered nascent souls. Without waiting for these scattered nascent souls to swell, the purple halos had already sprinkled down. Under the Tao seed, whether it was Xiaohua's scattered nascent souls or the hundreds of scattered nascent souls, they were unable to maintain their spiritual bodies and began to collapse rapidly. Wisps of indescribable mist flew out of the collapsing Tao seed and dissipated into the void. On the contrary, the Thunderbolt Immortal, who was sitting cross-legged in his lower dantian, not only did his entire body of laws not collapse, it instead became increasingly clear. The lines even flashed with purple light as his body expanded. Damn it. Seeing this, Xiaohua somewhat understood. This Tao seed is the seed of the Tao fruit. My scattered nascent souls only need to take this Tao seed and let it slowly fuse with my scattered nascent souls. I'll slowly cultivate my comprehension and let the Tao seed and the scattered nascent souls become one. Sooner or later, the Tao seed will grow into a Tao fruit, and I'll also harvest this Tao fruit sooner or later. But unfortunately, my lower dantian has primordial purple qi. When the primordial purple qi fell into the Tao seed, this Tao seed began to germinate even before it was planted in my scattered nascent souls. The profound meaning of this germination is simply not something my scattered nascent souls can bear. This. What should I do? Xiaohua's scattered nascent souls quickly disappeared and revealed their starry sky true form. The hundreds of scattered nascent souls also turned into bright stars. Starry sky, scattered nascent souls. Capital star formation. Xiaohua suddenly had a flash of inspiration. The hundreds of scattered nascent souls turned into capital star formation and surrounded the starry sky, scattered nascent souls. Then, without any hesitation, the starry sky, scattered nascent souls pounced on the Tao seed that also seemed to expand like a starry sky. Boom! An indescribable heavy pressure from the starry sky, scattered nascent soul's perception rushed into Xiaohua's mind. Xiaohua's scattered nascent soul's Tao seed was trampled on. Xiaohua did not dare to be negligent. As if he was meditating, he tried his best to absorb the insights and maintain the stability of his Tao foundation. After an unknown period of time, perhaps 1,000 years, or perhaps 10,000 years, Xiaohua heard Wen Zhen's voice again before he opened his eyes. That's why this junior wants the flying boat to stop here for 10 days so that the Wen clan's disciples can train here. Xiaohua was astonished. He suppressed his confusion and said, "Sure. Thank you, senior." Wen Zhen was delighted in his heart when he heard Xiaohua speak personally and not ask Yuhua to pass on the message, and he hurriedly agreed before turning around to make arrangements for the training. Xiaohua opened his eyes and looked around. Far away in the quiet room, Lu Qingyu and Nua Yeqing were sitting cross-legged, circulating their martial arts. Only Yuehua had already opened her eyes when she heard Wen Zhen's voice. She was about to report to Xiaohua, and when she heard that Xiaohua had already agreed, she respectfully nodded towards Xiaohua. Yuehua, Qingyu, Yeqing. Xiaohua slightly checked his physical body and knew that it was not a dream. After thinking for a moment, he said, "You all go out first. This old man has some things to do." Lu Qingyu and the other two did not dare to be negligent. They hurriedly got up and left the quiet room. Xiaohua was not in a hurry to check his cultivation. Instead, he first explored the space. There did not seem to be any special changes in the space. However, when Jade Archive Xiaohua appeared in the space, he clearly sensed that the entire space had undergone a fundamental change in a short period of time. Just like his physical body, the laws of heaven and earth in the Xinhua continent were almost mature. The few spaces around the Xinhua continent, such as the spirit realm and the space that contained the immortal mansion, had already taken shape. They were even several times larger than before. In particular, a space of a higher level than the spirit realm had also begun to take shape. Good. Jade Archive Xiaohua was overjoyed. He looked at everything on the Xinhua continent again. It did not seem to be affected by his breaking of the realm. He secretly praised it and withdrew his consciousness from the space. After checking the space, Xiaohua sensed his physical body again. Feng Wu, Huang Tong, and the other doppelgangers had already taken shape again. They were now sleeping in various places. It was probably because the laws of body condensation were different from Xiaohua's that they were not used to it yet and had not woken up. Finally, Xiaohua's consciousness fell into his lower dantian. At this time, the Thunderbolt Immortal was like an indomitable god in his lower dantian. His body flashed with purple-gold brilliance as he sat there cross-legged. The nearby void was faintly flickering with lightning, and layers of lightning turned into clouds that floated around the Thunderbolt Immortal. Above the lightning reverend's head, Xiaohua's nascent soul had yet to solidify. It was still in the form of a starry sky and slowly rotated there. However, in his original form, when the star-like radiances were still, they were still, and when they rotated at the same speed. At this moment, the radiances rotated at different speeds, and some of them were even still. Around the starry sky nascent soul, more than 109th tribulation scattered souls had taken shape. Their figures were similar to the Thunderbolt Immortal, but there was no thunder mist around them, only light purple clouds. These 9th tribulation scattered souls formed the capital stars formation and also rotated with the rotation of the starry sky nascent soul. As for the center of the capital stars formation, inside the body of the starry sky nascent soul, the Tao seed that almost took Xiaohua's life did not change further. However, the purple clouds that were previously condensed like stars were now rotating at the same rhythm as the starry sky nascent soul. Waves of strange fragrance and rays of light spread out along with the rotation, filling the entire lower dantian. Seeing that everything was fine, Xiaohua was relieved. He withdrew his mind and activated his magic power to check his cultivation. What made Xiaohua feel a little strange was that his cultivation had not fully recovered. It was only between the 6th and 7th level of elemental energy. If he wanted to activate the space escape technique, he could not. Xiaohua was really puzzled. However, he did not think too much about the reason why his cultivation had not fully recovered. Instead, he thought to himself, strange, what's going on with the Tao Master that just appeared? How do I know he's a Tao Master? Why did he give me a Tao seed that can grow into a Tao fruit? I remember that when I was still a Qi refining cultivator, I once thought about this. Who is the Tao master of our Tao sect? At that time, I seemed to have asked my master. My master also said that he did not know. However, when I wanted to ask again, he scolded me, saying that I did not cultivate properly, did not do my job properly, and only asked some meaningless questions. After so many years, I stopped thinking about this matter, but this Tao master unexpectedly came uninvited. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it as a reward, and Chapter 4906. Then, Xiaohua continued to think, however, it's normal. If the Buddhist sect uses the Buddha ancestor, then our Tao sect will naturally have a Tao venerable. Moreover, the Confucian cultivators will also have a Confucian venerable. The demon clan will also have a demon ancestor. Presumably, my Tao sect was founded by this Tao sovereign, right? But the problem is, this Xiao is not related to this Tao venerable. Before today, I didn't even know that this Tao venerable existed. Why would he favor this Xiao for no reason? This Tao fruit seems to be something different from the Buddha fruit. It's not a small matter. After thinking for a while, Xiaohua still couldn't understand and could only put this matter aside. From the current situation, the appearance of this Tao venerable is beneficial to this Xiao. Perhaps there will be opportunities in the future. This matter will naturally be resolved. With the current situation, it's better to quickly recover my cultivation and rush to the Wuming mountain range. However, when Xiaohua activated his cultivation method to speed up his recovery, he discovered that this kind of recovery was actually not something he could control. It was still related to the recovery of his physical body, or rather, it was related to the perfection of his body of laws. Forget it, more haste, less speed. I've already recovered about 60 to 70%. Moreover, this Xiao is also heading towards the Wuming mountain range. I'd better proceed according to my previous plan. Xiaohua helplessly smiled bitterly. Perhaps this Xiao has finished modifying the Tao sect's cultivation method. Thinking of this, Xiaohua's heart suddenly moved. He hurriedly waved his hand and took out the golden core cultivation method that he was modifying earlier. As expected, Xiaohua continued to modify the golden core cultivation method. Whether it was the exquisiteness of the cultivation method or the speed of modification, it was several times better than before. Damn it, this Xiao understands now. Xiaohua came to a realization secretly cursed, so the changes in the spiritual qi of Yilan continent have already attracted the attention of the Tao venerable. He wants to borrow this Xiao's hand to save the Tao sect of Yilan continent. That's why he gave this Tao seed to this Xiao, allowing this Xiao to comprehend the Tao seed and modify the Tao sect's cultivation method. But, thinking of this, Xiaohua was puzzled again. But Yilan continent is a lower realm. I don't know which immortal realm it belongs to. How could the Tao venerable be in the immortal realm? I'm afraid he's in a higher realm. How could he know the changes in the spiritual qi of Yilan continent? If he was so merciful, why didn't he show mercy to the 3 continents? Oh, I forgot. The Taoist sects of the 3 continents have long been annihilated. In the following 10 days, Xiaohua was puzzled and pondering, while speeding up the modification of the cultivation method. After the Wen clan disciples finished their training, they continued to rush to the Wen clan with the flying boat. Not to mention that Xiaohua didn't understand why Tao Venerate Bai had appeared, just the fact that the cultivators of the alliance were preparing to intercept Xiaohua made him even more confused than Xiaohua. These cultivators first followed Immortal Ji Yan's arrangement and waited at the teleportation array where Xiaohua might appear. However, after asking the disciples guarding the teleportation array, no one had seen Xiaohua, not even Yuehua, Lu Qingyu, and Nua Yeqing. These cultivators found it strange and hurriedly sent the message back to the Tao Alliance. At the same time, the message was sent to the Nebula Ridge and the Heaven Alliance through the teleportation formation. What puzzled old man Gu Qiong and Ji Yanjinren was that even after they arrived at the Wenbai Immortal Alliance, which was very close to the Heaven Alliance, there was still no news from Xiaohua. It was as if Xiaohua had disappeared immediately after leaving the Chanha sect. Strange. Ji Yanjinren came out of a teleportation array and was greeted by the disciples of the Dao Alliance who handed him the latest news. After reading it, Ji Yanjinren said in surprise, "Could it be that Zhang Xiaohua has sensed our plan and didn't go to the Heaven Alliance through the teleportation array? There are disciples of the Dao Alliance in the Heaven Alliance, so naturally, there are disciples of the Heaven Alliance in the Dao Alliance." Yi Clan's patriarch said with a smile, "The news in the Alliance conference must have been leaked, and Zhang Xiaohua got the news and fled first." Wanderer Fu Bo shook his head slightly. "I don't think the news is likely to be leaked. After all, after the Alliance conference, the disciples of the Dao Alliance immediately set up a trap. The news couldn't have reached Zhang Xiaohua so quickly. If I'm not mistaken, he must have contacted the disciples of the Heaven Alliance and rushed back to the Heaven Alliance through another teleportation array." "Yes, you're right." Ji Yanjinren nodded and turned to instruct the disciples of the Dao Alliance, "Pass down my order as the Alliance leader. Expand the search area and send the appearances of the four of them to all the disciples of the Immortal Alliance guarding the teleportation array. Report back immediately if you find any traces of them." "Yes." The disciple of the Dao Alliance received the order and turned to leave. However, Fairy Mo Yun raised her hand and said, "Wait. I have an idea." "Fairy, do you think that Zhang Xiaohua and the other three didn't use the teleportation array?" Ji Yanjinren asked with a smile. Fairy Mo Yun nodded. "That's right. Since Zhang Xiaohua didn't use the teleportation array according to Yu Zhuohong's instructions, she must have taken a flying Dharma artifact such as a flying boat. Oh, she might have taken a flying beast. Therefore, it's not realistic to stop them from using the teleportation array. Actually, it's not just a flying Dharma artifact or a flying beast." Ji Yanjinren looked at the crowd and said, "If the disciples of the Heavenly Alliance were to receive Zhang Xiaohua, they might have set up a teleportation bridge. Although the teleportation bridge's teleportation distance is not as far as the teleportation array, if they were to receive them one by one, their speed might not be slower than the teleportation array. The teleportation bridge is usually unstable, and it can easily form a spatial whirlpool and be affected by the teleportation channel." Yu Hongzi shook his head and said, "Zhang Xiaohua has a heavy responsibility. The Heavenly Alliance might use the teleportation bridge, but they won't use it all the time. I think it's more likely that they're using a flying Dharma artifact. That's troublesome." Fairy Mo Yun smiled bitterly. "The Yilan continent is so big. There are countless flying routes from the Fengyan Kingdom to the Heavenly Alliance. How can we stop them? Don't worry, fellow Taoists. I've already considered this when I left the Jinglong tomb. He can't cross the sacrificial abyss no matter if he uses a teleportation array, a teleportation bridge, or a flying Dharma artifact. I've already ordered the Grand Law Immortal Alliance and the Chongxi Immortal Alliance to send all their cultivators at the Mahayana realm and above to guard the sacrificial abyss and stop Zhang Xiaohua." Ji Yanjinren said confidently, "Moreover, I've invited all of you to the sacrificial abyss for the same reason." "All right." Wanderer Fu Bo agreed. "With the Deputy Alliance leader's plan, it'll be foolproof. We don't have to worry." "No." Ji Yanjinren suddenly thought of something and shook his head. "I'm a wise man, but I'm bound to make mistakes. I ordered the Dao Alliance disciples to escort the disciples of the Chan He sect back to the Nebula Ridge, but I forgot to ask them to check the situation of the nearest teleportation array from the Nebula Ridge." The Yi family patriarch said with a smile, "That's not neglect. After all, Zhang Xiaohua has been away from the Nebula Ridge for a long time. If the Heaven Alliance disciples came to pick him up, how could they have left any traces behind? Moreover, didn't the Dao Alliance disciples send us a message just now? Zhang Xiaohua didn't enter the nearest teleportation array to the Nebula Ridge. Since he didn't enter the teleportation array, he must have gone somewhere else and used other means. Crystals. Suddenly, old man Gu Qiong, who had been silent all this time, said, "We forgot about crystals. Zhang Xiaohua broke through the boundary and came here. He has lost all his magic power, so I'm afraid he didn't keep his storage ring and storage ring. He doesn't have any crystals on him, so how could he use the teleportation array?" Of course, old man Gu Qiong merely spoke up to hear before he stopped and shrugged. "Forget it, just pretend I didn't say anything." "No, no." Ji Yanjinren hurriedly said with a smile, "Senior, you're right. Although Zhang Xiaohua doesn't have any crystals and has lost all his magic power, he's at least a Mahayana cultivator, so it's easy for him to take some crystals from other cultivators. However, I've indeed neglected this matter. I'll send an order now and ask them to check the surroundings of the Nebula Ridge again." After Ji Yanjinren gave the order, everyone came out of the teleportation array and went to the next teleportation array to the Heaven Sacrificial Abyss. Dozens of days later, another message came. When Daoist Ji Yen saw the message in the jade slip, he was stunned on the spot. He even opened his mouth slightly as if he wanted to say something but didn't know what to say. "Ji Yen? What's going on?" Old man Gu Qiong looked at Ji Yanjinren in confusion and asked, "Did something happen?" Ji Yanjinren withdrew his divine thought from the jade slip and handed it to old man Gu Qiong. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry and said, "This is a message from the Chan He sect of the Nebula Ridge. Senior, take a look at it yourself. I don't understand it. I don't know what fellow Daoist Zhang is doing." "Is that so?" Old man Gu Qiong was curious. He took the jade slip and looked at it. Then, he smiled bitterly and said, "How is this possible?" "Senior." The Yi family's patriarch asked in a low voice, "What happened?" Before old man Gu Qiong could answer, Ji Yanjinren said, "The Chanyi sect sent a few disciples to visit Lu Hanhuan. They said that they were under orders to discuss cooperation with the Chanyi sect. Fellow Taoists, can you guess who they were under orders from?" Normally, these cultivators would have guessed someone else's name. However, judging from Ji Yanjinren and old man Gu Qiong's expressions, how could they not know that this person was Xiaohua? "Of course, it's Zhang Xiaohua." Fairy Mo Yun pursed her lips and said with a smile, "We cast a net in the Dao Alliance to stop him, but he's actually helping the Chanyi sect. It's not just Zhang Xiaohua." Old man Gu Qiong waved the jade slip in his hand and said, "There's also the Wen family of the Purple Chin Immortal Alliance and the Water Cloud Nation." "The Wen family of the Water Cloud Nation?" The Yi family's patriarch's expression changed and he asked curiously, "Why are they in the Fengyan Nation?" P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at the Chidian point, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, or tip it. Chapter 4907. The information in the jade slip isn't very detailed. It seems that the Wen clan's disciples went to the Fengyan kingdom to train. Ji Yen's spiritual master replied helplessly, "The Dao Alliance's disciples guarding Xingyin Ridge have already rushed to the auction house in Xiahong Mountain. Wen Jie from Chu Pu Immortal Alliance has also rushed there. If Zhang Xiaohua has been at the auction house in Xiahong Mountain, this information is too late, isn't it?" Yu Hongzi said doubtfully, "Perhaps this information is just a diversion." At this moment, the Yi clan's patriarch had already received the jade slip. He read it with his divine sense and said casually, "The Wen clan's disciples have already been to Xingyin Ridge. However, Xingyin Ridge is heavily guarded because Senior Gu Qiong killed the Heavenly Alliance's disciples. Moreover, the Chanyi sect master is not at Xingyin Ridge, so the Wen clan's disciples returned to the auction house before they arrived. This is the second time they've visited the Chanyi sect after knowing that Lu Hanhuan has returned to Xingyin Ridge." Everyone was speechless and looked at each other. After reading the jade slip, the Yi clan's patriarch handed it to Fairy Mo Yun and said, "Let's not hurry today. If the information in the jade slip is true, then Zhang Xiaohua should be with the Wen clan's disciples. No wonder Zhang Xiaohua is nowhere to be seen even though the teleportation route is so crowded. Ji Yan's spiritual master nodded and said, if this jade slip is a smokescreen of the Heavenly Alliance, we can start from the Wen clan of the Zichen Immortal Alliance and find out some clues about the Heavenly Alliance's actions. After half a day, news came from the auction house in Xiehong Mountain. The Dao Alliance's disciples had clearly found out what had happened at the auction house that day and reported it in detail. Ji Yan's spiritual master was even more confused. He had already determined that Xiao Hua was a Heavenly Alliance cultivator. Why would a Heavenly Alliance cultivator not hurry back to the Heavenly Alliance and sell the spiritual root selection method and spiritual root cultivation technique in an unknown auction house? However, if Xiao Hua wasn't a cultivator of the Heavenly Alliance, Daoist Ji Yan would have never heard of Zhang Xiaohua's name in the Dao Alliance, much less seen this high-level cultivator with a small nose and small eyes. But if Xiao Hua was an outsider, why was he able to speak the language of the Yilin continent and understand the Dao techniques of the Yilin continent? Fairy Mo Yun asked in a low voice, if Zhang Xiaohua is not a cultivator of the Heavenly Alliance, she might be an itinerant cultivator of the Dao Alliance. Impossible. Fu Bo shook his head. I know all of the famous unaffiliated cultivators of our Dao Alliance. Moreover, the strength of individual cultivators like us may not be inferior to that of Ji Yan Jinren, but we are definitely inferior in terms of inheritance. As for the modification of cultivation techniques, we naturally can't compare to them. I don't think Zhang Xiaohua is a rogue cultivator. Yu Hongzi pondered for a moment and reminded them, fellow cultivators, we might have overlooked something. Yu Zhuohong once said that the route Zhang Xiaohua was looking for was not the Heavenly Alliance, but the Wuming Mountains. Do you think he's a wizard from the Wuming Mountains? Old man Gu Qiong's heart trembled. He thought of the bloodline technique in the spiritual root selection method and nodded slightly. The Yi family's patriarch opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but he swallowed his words. He raised his hand to take the jade slip from old man Gu Qiong's hand and read it again. Ji Yan Jinren looked at old man Gu Qiong and nodded. In this case, Zhang Xiaohua's origin is even more confusing. She might be an itinerant cultivator of our Dao Alliance, a cultivator of the Heavenly Alliance, or a wizard from the Wuming Mountains. No. Old man Yi suddenly said, there's another possibility. Of course, Zhang Xiaohua might also be a cultivator of the Dao Alliance. Ji Yan Jinren immediately replied. No. Old man Yi said calmly, Deputy Alliance leader seems to have forgotten a place. There are disciples of our Dao Alliance there. What place? Ji Yan Jinren was puzzled. He lowered his head and pondered for a moment. Hiss. Old man Gu Qiong gasped and exclaimed, that's right. We forgot about that place. Alas, it's been too long. That place has almost been submerged in the river of time. Even I almost forgot about it. The abandoned land. Old man Gu Qiong's words enlightened all the cultivators, and they said almost in unison. However, Ji Yan Jinren immediately shook his head and said, fellow Daoist Ye's guess is right. But in fact, it's not very likely. Old man Gu Qiong also smiled and said, that's right, Ji Yan is right. Since it's an abandoned land, it's also a lost land. The Dao sects there have long been annihilated, so how could there be such an outstanding high-level cultivator? Such a cultivator is rare even in our Dao Alliance. How could there be one in the abandoned land? Moreover, the abandoned land has been separated from our Yilin continent since ancient times. Although we haven't been to the Wuming Mountain range, we've heard about it. Even powerful people like Kong Chang and Yang Xia don't dare to take risks there. How could Zhang Xiaohua have come to our Dao Alliance from the abandoned land? Fairy Mo Yun also said with a smile. However, before she could finish, old man Yi reminded her, Fairy Mo Yun, don't forget that Senior Gu Qiong has explored the Xia mountain range. There's an aura of someone breaking through the boundary there. Zhang Xiaohua might have returned from outside the boundary. That's possible. Ji Yanjinren finally said, but a cultivator from the abandoned land can't be so powerful. I know this, or I would have thought of the abandoned land that day. Take the abandoned land as a possibility. Old man Gu Qiong said, there are only a few possibilities. Who cares where she came from? Now, we have another choice besides stopping Zhang Xiaohua in the sacrificial abyss. That's right. Ji Yanjinren nodded and said, although we've already passed the Water Cloud Nation, it's not too far from here. We don't need to send messages anymore. Let's go directly to the Wen clan in the Water Cloud Nation. Fellow Taoist Ji Yan, don't be too careless. I think we should send an order to the Purple Chin Immortal Alliance and ask their alliance master to go to the Wen clan first. Old Man Yi reminded him, but don't let him alert the enemy. That's not right. Old man Gu Qiong said curiously, Ji Yan, the Wen clan of the Purple Chin Immortal Alliance is also a member of the Tao Alliance. Didn't the Wen clan master attend the alliance meeting? Ji Yanjinren was a little embarrassed. He took out a jade slip and handed it to old man Gu Qiong, saying, Alliance master, I just checked it. The Wen clan master was one of the dozen cultivators who didn't make it to the alliance meeting in time. Alas, what a coincidence. Old man Gu Qiong sighed helplessly. Then, Ji Yanjinren issued an order for the cultivators to head to the Wen clan in the Water Cloud Nation. Wen Zhen brought the disciples of the Wen clan back from the Purple Cypress Forest, and they were in a sorry state. After the change in the spiritual qi of heaven and earth, the strength of many demonic beasts had increased. Although the Purple Cypress Forest was a common place for the Wen clan to train, it was much more dangerous than before. Wen Zhen was caught off guard and lost some disciples, and he himself was slightly injured. Wen Zhen naturally wouldn't tell Xiaohua about this kind of thing. After the flying boat started and flew for more than half a day, Wen Zhen's injuries stabilized. Only then did Wen Zhen gather the Wen family disciples for a discussion. They decided not to continue the training and directly return to the sect. After flying for another 2 days, the flying boat stopped outside a wasteland. Wen Zhen ordered the disciples to pack up and went to the quiet room himself. Before he could say anything, Yu Hua, who was in the quiet room, said, Senior Zhang said that you can train by yourselves and don't disturb him when he modifies the cultivation method. Wen Zhen smiled and said politely, my little friend Yu, please report to Senior Zhang that my training is over. I'm going to use the Wen clan's teleportation formation to return to the Water Cloud Nation. Creak. The door of the quiet room opened and Xiaohua flew out. He looked at the wasteland and asked curiously, the Wen clan has a teleportation formation here? Senior, please no. Wen Zhen didn't dare to hide it and said with a smile, the teleportation formation here is a secret of the Wen clan. It's not used except in times of emergency and for training. I didn't even use it the day I came here. This kind of teleportation formation, the Wen clan has a lot of them in the Yilin continent, right? Xiaohua asked with a smile. Of course. Wen Zhen said cautiously and proudly, this teleportation array is the accumulation of countless generations of Wen family descendants. Even ordinary immortal cultivation sects don't have as many teleportation arrays as our Wen family, let alone the Chanha sect. Then let's go. Xiaohua nodded and said, I've been modifying the cultivation method faster these days. I want to test it out with these cultivation methods. That's great. Hearing this, Wen Zhen's spirit was lifted. He clapped his hands and said, if the Wen clan grows stronger because of this, Senior Zhang will be the benefactor of the Wen clan. Then Wen Zhen asked Xiaohua, Yu Hua, and the others to get off the flying boat and wait at the side. He and the other disciples kept the flying boat and carefully flew for half an hour with Xiaohua and the others. Then they found the Wen clan's teleportation formation under the wasteland. When the teleportation formation was cleaned and the crystals were put in, the cultivators activated the teleportation formation. The moon had already risen in the sky. The teleportation formation's teleportation distance was not as far as Xiaohua thought, so the teleportation pressure was not very big. When they came out of the teleportation formation, Wenjun carefully concealed the teleportation formation. Then he took out the flying boat again and flew straight to Dongfang Yuxiao. Only then did he arrive at another teleportation formation that was similarly concealed. In this way, Xiao Hua and Wenjun used more than 10 teleportation formations in a row in a few days. Only then did they arrive at a place with beautiful mountains and clear water. Xiao Hua and the others had just flown out of the teleportation formation when they were immediately surrounded by cultivators holding magic treasures and huge ferocious beasts. After Wenjun showed the token and explained the matter, the disciple guarding the teleportation formation retreated. While sending a message to the sect, he also sent a disciple to drive the flying boat back to the sect. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a month, vote for a recommendation, collect, reward, and thank you for all kinds of support. Chapter 4908. Standing on the flying boat, Wenjun looked at the mountain range in the distance that looked like a huge dragon coiling on the ground. At the head of the dragon, there were countless palaces that looked like bright pearls. Wenjun couldn't help but say proudly, "Senior, please take a look. That mountain range is the foundation of my Wen clan. It's called the Coiling Dragon Mountain Range. It's said that my Wen clan's ancestor had a bet with the sect leader of a cultivation sect and won this mountain range. At this moment, the clan leader must have received my message and will come out to welcome us immediately." "Wenjun, you're thinking too much." The person who escorted Wenjun and the other disciples back to the mountain was an old man who was close to the void refinement realm. He stood in the distance of the flying boat and glanced at Wenjun and Xiao Hua indifferently. He said, "The clan leader is not at the Coiling Dragon Mountain." How is that possible?" Wenjun exclaimed, "Before I brought the disciples to train, wasn't the clan leader still in the clan? Moreover, the person who has been sending me messages. Isn't it the clan leader? The clan leader went to the secluded mountain villa to participate in the Tao Alliance's meeting and hasn't returned yet. The person who is handling the clan's affairs at the Coiling Dragon Mountain Range is the fourth ancestor." The old man explained. "Fourth ancestor?" At this moment, Wenjun was even more surprised. I haven't seen him for thousands of years, right? Why did he suddenly appear?" The old man glanced at Wenjun and said with a smile, "If you don't know, how would I know? I also want to ask the clan leader, in these thousands of years, how far has the fourth ancestor cultivated?" Boom boom boom. Just as the old man was speaking, the dragon head in the mountain range in the distance emitted a loud rumbling sound. Layers of dark red light emerged from the place where the palaces gathered and shot straight into the sky. At the same time, under the light, there was a layer of light that looked like water ripples that spread along the mountain range. Not only did it sweep past the mountain peak, but it also seeped into the ground. Under the flying boat, the range of thousands of miles was instantly gorgeous and beautiful. Then, the light that soared into the sky collided with the clouds high in the sky, tearing the sky apart. Then, the light and the torn clouds intertwined, condensing into a five-colored cloud layer that covered 1,000 miles in the sky. A gust of wind blew, and the clouds that covered the sky and covered the sun and moon suddenly rippled. Swoosh swoosh. The ripples were like raindrops falling, but after falling for a few dozen feet, the raindrops suddenly swelled up and took the shape of lanterns. What was special was that at this moment, the clouds began to thin, and rays of sunlight shone through the gaps between the clouds, shining on the lantern. The lanterns seemed to have been ignited. Tens of thousands of lanterns shot out beams of light, illuminating the surroundings of Xiao Hua's flying boat. The entire world was suffused with 5 colors. Neon welcome. The spirit-severing realm old man was dumbfounded. He looked at Brilliant in disbelief and exclaimed, "This. My Wen family hasn't welcomed a guest like this in thousands of years. I just don't know." With that, the spirit-severing realm old man looked at Xiao Hua again. He didn't understand how this unknown and weak cultivator attracted the attention of the fourth ancestor. While they were talking, the flying boat slowly stopped. Wenjin didn't find it strange. Instead, his face was flushed with excitement. He lowered his voice and said, almost showing off, "Senior brother, what do you think is the most troublesome thing for my Wen family in the past 500 years? River Basin sect?" The spirit-severing realm old man immediately said the name of a sect, but as soon as he said it, Wenjin unhappily said, "Senior brother, River Basin sect is just a clown. They rely on raising spirit beasts to increase their strength, but how can they compare to my Wen family's foundation? They are nothing." The spirit-severing realm old man suddenly slapped his forehead and said, "I understand. It's the selection of my Wen family's juniors." With that, the spirit-severing realm old man bowed to Xiao Hua and said, "Junior Wen Hong greets Senior Zhang." It was this junior who had eyes but failed to see and neglected senior. Ah. Senior brother. Wenjin originally wanted to keep Xiao Hua in suspense, but who knew that Wen Hong guessed correctly? In particular, Wen Hong, who had always been quite arrogant, actually saluted Xiao Hua, which made him even more puzzled. Wenjin couldn't help but ask curiously, how did you guess it so quickly? Fellow Taoist Wen, please get up." Xiao Hua helped Wen Hong up and said with a smile, "This old man is a member of the Tao sect, and your Wen family is also a branch of the Tao sect. What this old man can do for the Tao sect and the development of your Wen family is a matter of course. You don't have to be so polite. This matter is insignificant in senior's eyes, but in junior's eyes, it is very important." Wen Hong stood up and said with a smile, "If it weren't for senior's arrival, the descendants of the collateral branches like us, and even, alas, to put it bluntly, many of juniors can't be counted as the inner branch of the Wen family. Today, they can all take part in the selection with senior's help. Even if they fail, this is still a chance for them. This is all thanks to senior's grace." Wen Zhen was puzzled. He pulled Wen Hong and asked, "Senior brother, junior passed the spiritual root selection method to the sect, but in fact, junior thinks that the most important thing is the cultivation method of the spiritual root. So, after junior received the message from the fourth ancestor, I specially asked Senior Zhang to come to my Wen family for guidance." "What are you talking about?" "That's right," Wen Hong said with a smile. "Previously, the fourth ancestor issued a family head order, requesting all the children from the families who are related to our Wen family from 3 to 10 years old to gather at the 5th mountain range of Coiling Dragon Mountain to carry out the largest selection of disciples. We were all overjoyed. However, we only knew that this was an opportunity, but we didn't know where it would come from. Now that I've met Senior Zhang, I know that this is all Senior Zhang's. Oh, it's also junior brother's credit." As he spoke, Wen Hong also cupped his hands and bowed to Wen Zhen, "Junior brother, please accept my salute. After this matter is over, I'm sure the other brothers in the clan will also have to thank you." I don't dare. Wen Zhen hurriedly helped Wen Hong up and replied, "This is what junior brother should do." As the two of them spoke, the lantern-like clouds that had previously dripped down from the sky had already landed near the flying boat. Moreover, there were still more lanterns in the sky. Just in front of the flying boat, the fallen lanterns gradually gathered together and turned into a flashing rainbow bridge. One end of the rainbow bridge was in front of the flying boat, while the other end fell on Coiling Dragon Mountain. "Senior, please wait here for a moment," Wen Hong hurriedly said. "According to our Wen family's etiquette, the fourth ancestor will personally come to welcome you." "Senior, you don't have to go there first." Xiao Hua smiled bitterly and said, "Your fourth ancestor is too polite. With such great fanfare, this old man is afraid that he will be disappointed." He won't. Wen Zhen hurriedly comforted Xiao Hua, not to mention the Qi refinement cultivation method that Senior previously took out, just the foundation establishment cultivation method that Senior modified later and the incomplete golden core cultivation method. The fourth ancestor would only be so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. How could he be disappointed? Say. Senior has almost finished modifying the golden core cultivation method. Hearing this, Wen Hong was really shocked. He lowered his voice and said, Senior, this cultivation method, can I take a look? Hearing this, Wen Zhen hurriedly winked at Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua understood Wen Zhen's meaning and said with a smile, Fellow Daoist, why are you in such a hurry? When this old man arrives at the Wen family, this cultivation method will soon be handed over to your Wen family. At that time, you can take a look at it however you want. That's true, that's true. Wen Hong scratched his head and said somewhat embarrassedly. His gaze turned to Wen Jin again, but before he could speak again, a string of music rang out and a flying boat pulled by a 5-colored wand flew over the rainbow bridge from afar. When the flying boat came closer, Xiao Hua could clearly see that this flying boat was only a few dozen feet long. The flying boat was not rhombus-shaped, but rather square-shaped. The 4 sides of the flying boat were engraved with flowers and plants of the 4 seasons. There was also a golden lid on the flying boat that was shaped like a plum blossom. Under the plum blossom was a thin young man with slanted eyebrows, eyes like dots of ink, and slightly thin lips that were slightly curled up. A kind of arrogance involuntarily flowed from this proud face. Beside the young man, there were naturally more than 10 beautiful women dressed in beautiful clothes. These women were playing the zither and the 10 pairs of curious eyes fell on Xiao Hua's body. However, it was clear that Xiao Hua's appearance did not surprise them. Moreover, Xiao Hua had already controlled the secret technique of Qingshu Mountain, so after seeing him, their gazes faded away. On the other hand, the young man's eyes were even more fervent. Without waiting for the flying boat to stop, he immediately floated down from the flying boat. His clothes were as white as snow, causing the women on the flying boat to secretly praise him. This one is Wen Zhou. Greetings, fellow Daoist Zhang. The young man landed on the rainbow bridge and cupped his hands in salute. His early-stage Mahayana cultivation base was not concealed in any way. Fellow Daoist one is too polite. Xiao Hua returned the salute in a manner that was neither haughty nor humble. I'm Zhang Xiao Hua. Greetings, fellow Daoist. Wen Zhou frowned slightly. He had already seen that Xiao Hua's cultivation base was only at the early-stage body integration stage. To put it bluntly, calling him fellow Daoist was a form of politeness. However, Xiao Hua actually accepted his salute and even called him fellow Daoist instead of senior, which made him a little surprised. Wen Zhou couldn't help but take another look. After thinking for a moment, he smiled and said, when this old man saw the spirit root selection method that Wen Zhen passed back, I was truly astonished. That's why I asked him to invite you here at all costs. Now that I've met you, I'm even more surprised. With fellow Daoist Zhang's cultivation base, you were actually able to create such a miraculous cultivation method. Fellow Daoist Zhang is truly a genius from the heavens. Boy greets the 4th ancestor. Wen Zhen seized the opportunity to kneel and kowtow. Boy may not have seen Senior Zhang create the spirit root selection method, but Boy has seen Senior Zhang modify the golden core cultivation method with his own eyes. Senior Zhang's vision is truly extraordinary. Junior and the others greet Senior Wen. Lu Qingyu, Yu Hua, and Nuo Yeqing hurriedly knelt and kowtowed as well. A Mahayana cultivator was not someone they could casually meet. Vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, donate it, and Chapter 4909. Get up, get up. Wen Zhou laughed and helped everyone up. This old man heard from Wen Zhen that all of you are fated with my Wen clan. After today's matter, this old man will throw a big banquet and reward all of you generously. Thank you, Senior Wen, Yu Hua and the others replied respectfully. Fellow Daoist Zhang, please follow me onto the boat. Wen Zhou raised his hand. This boat and the neon sky welcoming ceremony are the highest form of etiquette our Wen clan uses to welcome our esteemed guests. In order to welcome fellow Daoist Zhang, I didn't ask for permission from the clan leader and directly used it. I hope fellow Daoist can lend me a hand and do his best to pass down our Wen clan's legacy. Hee, fellow Daoist one, don't worry. Since I'm here, I have no intention of not doing anything. Xiao Hua smiled. Furthermore, this poor Daoist wants to borrow the Wen family's strength to spread these cultivation techniques throughout the Yi-Lin continent. Your Wen clan will be the source of the Yi-Lin continent's new cultivation methods. Hearing this, Wen Zhou's eyes lit up. He clapped his hands and said, fellow Daoist Zhang, oh fellow Daoist Zhang, you've won me over with just a few words. Come. Follow me onto the boat. When Qin Fan returns, we must have him greet you as a clan official. With that, Wen Zhou invited Xiao Hua to board the boat first. Xiao Hua naturally refused. The two exchanged pleasantries for a while before Wen Zhou boarded the boat first. Xiao Hua brought Yu Hua and the others up after him. Wen Zhen and the others naturally didn't have the qualifications. After the boat left and the rainbow bridge shrank, they returned to the boat. When the boat landed on Coiling Dragon Mountain, it inevitably became lively again. The Wen clan's elders, Wen Qin, Wen Yushi, and Wen Zhuoqi, as well as the Wen clan's steward in charge of internal affairs and external affairs, all came to greet Xiao Hua. The liveliness far exceeded the standard of receiving a body integration cultivator. In addition to showing the importance the Wen clan's four ancestors placed on Xiao Hua, it also revealed the Wen clan's urgent need for spirit root selection and cultivation methods. After a full hour of greeting, Xiao Hua followed Wen Zhou to the Wen clan's discussion hall. Although it was called a meeting hall, it was several times larger than the Clear Heart Hall of the Chanhe sect. However, there were no jade chairs placed on the platform of the meeting hall. Some jade chairs carved from clear jade were placed below the platform. Other than Xiao Hua and the others, there were no other people from the Wen family who entered the meeting hall. Even the steward and the foreign steward from before didn't enter. After everyone was seated, a disciple served spirit tea. Wen Zhou raised his teacup with a smile and said apologetically to Xiao Hua, fellow Daoist Zhang has come from afar. My Wen clan should have held a banquet to welcome you. However, my Wen family's request for your help is far too important, so I'll use tea instead of wine to toast you. When the family head returns, he will host the banquet. Xiao Hua raised his teacup and said with a smile, I'll say the same thing again. Fellow Daoist one is too polite. I also don't like any excitement. After helping the Wen clan, I might rest for a while at Coiling Dragon Mountain and then leave. Whatever banquet, I don't need it. Fellow Daoist Zhang has helped my Wen family so much. How can Qin Fan let you go so easily when he returns? Wen Zhou laughed and raised his cup. Come, fellow Daoist Zhang. Try my Wen family's nameless spirit tea. All right. Xiao Hua took a sip. As soon as the spirit tea entered his mouth was filled with a refreshing fragrance. Waves of spirit qi flowed through his body like fine needles. Good tea. Xiao Hua praised and said to Nuo Yeqing, why don't you drink a few more cups? This spirit tea is very beneficial for your core formation. Yes. Nuo Yeqing was naturally obedient and agreed. She then said to Wen Zhou, thank you, Senior Wen. This child. Wen Zhou was happy to hear that and said to the disciple beside him, quickly bring some spirit tea over. The disciple was shocked, but he didn't dare to disobey and hurriedly left. A moment later, he came back with a palm-sized emerald green jade box and handed it to Wen Zhou unwillingly. Wen Zhou didn't even look at it. He waved his hand and handed it to Nuo Yeqing. He smiled and said, since you like it, this old man will give you some more. Seeing that Wen Zhou loved the house so much, Xiao Hua hurriedly stood up and said, fellow Daoist one, why are you so polite? Wen Zhou rolled his eyes and said unhappily, what's there to be polite about? Others don't know the value of the things that fellow Daoist gave my Wen family, but this old man is very clear. What does this spirit tea count for? Isn't it just a little produced every 100 years? If it weren't for fellow Taoists' cultivation method, my Wen family might not even have a disciple to pick the spirit tea in another 100 years. All right. Wen Zhou was so enthusiastic that Xiao Hua was helpless. He raised his hand and took out a few jade slips and handed them to Wen Zhou. He said, "These are the cultivation methods that I recently modified. Fellow Taoist, please take a look first. After helping fellow Taoists select disciples, I will modify the other cultivation methods." Okay. Wen Zhou's eyes lit up, and the few clan elders who had been silent finally showed joy. The female clan elder named Wen Yushi said in a low voice, "Fourth ancestor, can you let me see the golden core cultivation method that fellow Taoist Zhang modified?" Back then, the family head had ordered us to brainstorm and modify it, but we couldn't figure it out no matter how hard we racked our brains. Now that we see this jade slip, our hearts are like a cat scratching at them. Wen Zhou smiled slightly and took the cultivation method. He didn't say anything, but casually immersed his spiritual sense into one of them. After looking at it for a moment, he unconsciously slapped the jade chair and said, "Fellow Taoist Zhang, you really didn't disappoint this old man. The uniqueness of this cultivation method's modification is really strange." Fourth ancestor. Wen Qing, Wen Yushi, Wen Zhuqi, and the others all opened their mouths to ask for it. Wen Zhou looked at everyone and then at the jade slip in his hand. He waved his hand and said, "You don't have to be anxious. Let this old man carefully ponder over it, then I'll give it to you to comprehend." All right. Wen Qing and the others didn't dare to say anything more and could only look at each other and agree. Fourth ancestor. Wen Zhuqi took the opportunity to stand up again and said, "Wen Zhen went out to train this time." However, before Wen Zhuqi finished his report, Wen Zhou waved his hand impatiently and said, "Training is such a trivial matter, do you still need to report to this old man? When Qingfan comes back, let Wen Zhen tell him. I know Wen Zhen is your junior, and he has made a great contribution this time. Qingfan will definitely reward him heavily." Yes, this disciple understands. Wen Zhuqi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He agreed and sat down obediently. Fellow Taoist Zhang. At this moment, when Zhou finally invited, "This old man knew you were coming, so I specially gathered all the disciples of the Wen surname who hadn't been selected in the past 10 years. Previously, this old man also tried to use your spiritual root selection method to select some. It's just that the selection was too easy, and this old man also doesn't know if I've selected correctly, so I hope fellow Taoist can give me some pointers." Hee, that spiritual root selection method can only be used by Qi refinement and foundation establishment disciples. Why does fellow Taoist need to personally perform it? Xiao Hua said with a smile. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support it, vote for it, vote for it, vote for it, give it as a reward, and thank you for all forms of support. Today is the 8th watch period, and I wish everyone a happy Children's Day. Haha, I'm out of chapters again. What a pity, what a pity. Chapter 49:10. You're right, fellow Taoist. I was even more confused when I saw how simple the cultivation method was. Wen Zhou smiled. That's why I had some Wen clan disciples practice the 4th level of Coiling Dragon Mountain. If it's convenient for you, would you like me to accompany you there? Sure. Xiao Hua nodded. Actually, the method of selecting spiritual roots is very mature and doesn't require too much guidance. However, I'm not absolutely sure about the cultivation method of spiritual roots. I feel that if it's possible, why don't you let those disciples come over and I'll explain it to you in the meeting hall. That's fine too. When Zhou looked around and said awkwardly, "But I'm afraid the meeting hall will be too crowded if we let nearly 100,000 disciples come over." Xiao Hua was shocked. Fellow Taoist, you're saying there are 100,000 Wen clan disciples? Children between 3 years old, and 10 years old? Huh, fellow Taoist, you don't know. Wen Qing smiled. Our Wen clan has many descendants and it hasn't been easy to select disciples for the past 100 years. So. That's why I told you to let the children between the ages of 3 and 8 come here. You can extend it to the age of 10. Wen Zhou curled his lips and said, and I also know that in fact, the children above the age of 10 make up 30%. Wen Yushi looked at Wen Qing and Wen Zhuqi. The three of them exchanged glances. Wen Yushi smiled and said, that's not all. We're worried about the Wen clan's inheritance, so we called some of the side branches' descendants over. Forget it, forget it. Wen Zhou waved his hand. They're all descendants of the Wen clan. When Qingfan comes back, just tell him. I don't care about this. Wen Qing thought of something and asked, fourth ancestor, why hasn't the clan head returned yet? I remember the Dao Alliance already sent a message. Him? It would have been fine if Wen Qing didn't mention it. When Wen Zhou heard this, he was furious. He waved his hand and said, about this, you can ask him later. If it weren't for him, would I need to beg fellow Taoist Zhang like this? Wen Qing didn't dare to ask further upon seeing Wen Zhou's anger. Xiao Hua smiled. Fellow Taoist Wen, I have 2 things to ask. Oh. Please speak, fellow Taoist Zhang. Wen Zhou was originally standing up, but when he heard this, he was a bit surprised. He thought that Xiao Hua wanted to raise some conditions, so he suppressed the displeasure in his heart and sat back down. I would like to ask, where did the Wen family bloodline come from? But. Does it have anything to do with the fire phoenix or the colorful phoenix? Xiao Hua knew that Wen Zhou had misunderstood and hurriedly asked the question in his heart. Fire phoenix? Kai Huang? Wen Zhou was taken aback. He pondered for a moment, looked around, and asked, as far as this old man knows, my Wen family's bloodline has nothing to do with these true spirits. What about you? Of course it doesn't matter. Wen Yushi said with a smile, our Wen family's human bloodline is very pure. It has nothing to do with true spirits. Why would fellow Taoist Zhang suddenly ask such a question? Oh, nothing. As Xiao Hua spoke, he took out the plum blossom-shaped token that he had obtained from Mo Zhao Black Forest and calmly replied, I obtained this token in a forbidden area. That day, this token was with a bone phoenix. That's why I asked this question. Of course, to tell you the truth, if I didn't see your Wen family's disciples with this kind of mark, I wouldn't have come here so easily with Wen Jin. I don't care about the cooperation between Chanha sect and Wen family. Unfortunately, whether it was Wen Zhou, Wen Qing, Wen Yushi, or the others, they didn't care about the meaning of Xiao Hua's words. They all stood up, stared at the token in Xiao Hua's hand, and exclaimed, Sky. Sky plum token? How? How is this possible? Does the sky plum token really exist in this world? After a moment, when Zhou came back to his senses and shook his head in disbelief, this old man doesn't dare to believe it. Fellow Taoist Zhang, can you show this thing to us? Wen Yushi lowered his voice and tried to suppress the shock in his heart as he asked. What's the origin of this thing? Does it belong to your Wen family? Xiao Hua didn't immediately hand over the so-called sky plum token to anyone. Instead, he asked with a smile. This. Wen Yushi hesitated and turned to look at Wen Zhou. Wen Zhou was also hesitant at this time and no longer acted as if he was taking charge of everything. Actually, my Wen family. Wen Zhuqi was a little impatient and wanted to speak, but just as he said a few words, Wen Zhou scolded, Zhuqi, what are you going to do without the family head's orders? Wen Zhuqi knew that he was too impatient and hurriedly shut his mouth. The entire discussion hall was dead silent. How about this? Wen Zhou thought for a moment and even raised his head to look outside the hall as if he was looking at the sky. Then he said, I'll leave the sky plum token with fellow Taoist Zhang first. Anyway, the sky plum token will leave my One family isn't in a day or two, so there's no need to rush these few days. Go to the ancestral hall and check the ancient records first so that fellow Daoist Zhang can know the origin of the sky plum token. When the family head returns, we'll discuss this matter together and then ask fellow Daoist Zhang to make a decision. Yes, we'll listen to the fourth ancestor. Wen Qing and the others hurriedly stood up and said, "We'll go check right away. Is there a need to be so impatient?" Wen Zhou rolled his eyes at them in annoyance, but he was just saying it and didn't stop them. When the elders left, Wen Zhou smiled and said, "Fellow Daoist, please keep the sky plum token well. This item is very important to my Wen family." When the family head returns, I'll let him discuss it with you. Seeing that Wen Zhou didn't bully the weak and snatch it, Xiao Hua was very satisfied with the Wen family. He smiled and said, "If that's the case, I'll keep it first. Fellow Daoist, don't worry. As long as I know the origin of this item, your Wen family can get it without paying any price. Fellow Daoist Zhang, don't worry. My family head will definitely give you a satisfactory answer." Wen Zhou smiled and stood up. "Let's go. This old man wants to see fellow Daoist Zhang's magical cultivation method." "Okay, fellow Daoist Wen, please." Xiao Hua stood up and smiled. Lu Qingyu and the others also hurriedly stood up. However, Wen Zhou didn't take Xiao Hua out of the meeting hall. Instead, he walked to the back of the hall. After passing through two side halls, they arrived at a small hut. This hut was empty, but after Wen Zhou sent a few spells into it, the floor of the hut rippled. After several layers of light were annihilated, a strange magic array appeared. When Wen Zhou put several crystals into a few grooves that looked like the mouth of a beast, a faint rumbling sound came from the magic array, and a black and white light was produced. Xiao Hua was surprised and asked curiously, "Fellow Daoist Wen, didn't you just say that it's in the fourth layer of Pan Long Mountain? Could it be that the fourth layer isn't in Pan Long Mountain?" P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please go to Qidian to subscribe to support, vote for a monthly vote, vote for a recommendation vote, collect, reward, and thank all forms of support. Chapter 49:11. Fellow Zhang misunderstood. The fourth layer is obviously inside Pan Long Mountain. Wen Zhou laughed, "It's just that this old man is too lazy to fly. Moreover, when we go out, those guards will shout and keep us company. It's really noisy, so this old man usually uses the teleportation array inside Pan Long Mountain. Damn it." Xiao Hua heard this and laughed bitterly. On the Xiaoyu continent, the teleportation array had long been lost. Any sect that had a teleportation array was already very arrogant. However, looking at the Yilin continent, the Wen clan, which was not particularly famous, had many secret teleportation arrays on the Yilin continent. Even within the sect, there were so many small teleportation arrays. Alas, they really didn't treat teleportation arrays as arrays. After the teleportation array was activated, Xiao Hua's divine sense swept over it. He knew that it was indeed a small teleportation array as Wen Zhou said, so he smiled and asked Wen Zhou to go first. After Lu Qingyu and the others entered, he was the last to step into the teleportation array. At the same time that Xiao Hua stepped into the teleportation array, in a place hundreds of miles away from Pan Long Mountain, in a valley that was not too barren, there was a slight vibration. The originally calm jade pool in the valley immediately set off light ripples. As soon as the water ripples appeared, faint mana fluctuations immediately appeared on the walls of the valley where only the wind and the chirping of birds could be heard. A dozen or so Aurus core disciples wearing armor, under the leadership of a nascent soul cultivator, quietly flew out from the hidden mountain rocks and surrounded the jade pool above. Boom! After the ripples, a pillar of water like a pillar rushed into the sky. Black and white threads of light could be faintly seen in the water light, and a teleportation aura rushed out from the pillar of water and overflowed in all directions of the valley. Then, within the pillar of water, 2 figures appeared in the valley. These 2 figures fell into the encirclement of more than 10 disciples on guard. However, when these disciples saw the newcomers, they unconsciously looked at each other in dismay. Everyone looked at each other and bowed together. Disciples greet the clan head. Within the pillar of water, surrounded by everyone, a man and a woman stepped on the waves and came over. The man had a strong build, a delicate face, dressed like a scholar, and held a folding fan in his hand. He had a romantic appearance. As for the woman beside the man, her eyes were filled with affection. Her face was like a peach blossom, and between her ample breasts and plump buttocks, she had a slender waist that could stir up thousands of emotions. This man was naturally the head of the Wen family, Wen Qingfan. At this moment, Wen Qingfan's face was slightly red and his body was a little crooked. He looked a little weak as he leaned on the woman's body. The woman's full breasts were pressed against Wen Qingfan's arm. The lines of her breasts were a little out of shape. However, the woman looked at her slightly red lips and didn't show any dissatisfaction. She seemed to be whispering something into Wen Qingfan's ear. When Wen Qingfan heard that the disciples wanted to see him, he didn't care that they were looking at each other. He waved his hand and said, "All of you, rise. Quickly drive the flying boat and send this old man back to the mountain. In addition, pass down the order, to arrange a banquet. This old man wants to banquet, invite Fairy Xinglin." Family head. That nascent soul cultivator hurriedly flew over and whispered, "Could it be that you drank too much? Please wake up." This disciple heard that, "Our Wen clan has a distinguished guest. 4th ancestor has just used the Wen clan's highest standard neon sky welcome." What? Neon sky welcome? Although Wen Qingfan was a little drunk, he was a Mahayana cultivator after all. He instantly sobered up and exclaimed, "What's wrong with 4th ancestor? What distinguished guest has come to our Wen clan? He actually dares to use the neon sky welcome?" This disciple isn't too sure. The nascent soul cultivator smiled apologetically. This disciple only knows that the sect has recently been gathering suitable heirs to prepare for a rare disciple selection. Selection my ass. Wen Qingfan was enraged when he heard this. If we can't find any disciples and don't have suitable cultivation techniques, what's the point of cultivating? A late golden core stage disciple beside him mustered up his courage and whispered, "Family head, this disciple has been thinking for a long time. In this entire Yilin continent, I'm afraid that only the Alliance Master of the Tao Alliance would be worthy of this neon sky welcome. Could it be family head? Then that's even more ridiculous." Wen Qingfan was even angrier when he heard this. He raised his hand and pointed at the crowd with his folding fan. "If anyone dares to mention the Tao Alliance to me in the future, I'll wring your heads off." However, before Wen Qingfan could finish speaking, a powerful sense of the soul appeared out of nowhere. It swept past Wen Qingfan and the disciples of the Wen family, locking onto them immediately. At the same time, a voice that Wen Qingfan was familiar with rang out in the sky. "Wen Qingfan, what's wrong with the Tao Alliance? Are you in the right for not attending the Alliance meeting on time?" Huh? Wen Qingfan turned pale with fright. He looked incredulously at the huge transmission channel that appeared in the sky and cried out, "Vice Alliance Master, why are you here? You wouldn't use the land transmission bridge for this junior to come to Coiling Dragon Mountain to denounce me, right?" Under Wen Qingfan's gaze, the void channel rapidly shrank and turned into the shape of a bridge. The void at the end of the bridge was extremely distorted, and a small door gradually took shape. Following Wen Qingfan's voice, Ji Yan, Old Man Gu Qiong, and the others stepped out of the door. When the last fairy Mo Yun flew out, the entire door let out a thunderous roar and slowly collapsed. A thunderous roar echoed in the depths of the collapsed space. Is the puny Wen clan worth this old man's anger? Ji Yan landed in front of Wen Qingfan and looked disdainfully at him. He then looked at the woman who lowered her head and didn't dare to look up. He said coldly, "I can expel your Wen clan from the Tao Alliance with a single word." Why would I have to chase you all the way to Coiling Dragon Mountain to denounce you? Old man Gu Qiong didn't have the patience and asked directly, Wen Qingfan, is Zhang Xiaohua on Coiling Dragon Mountain? Who is Zhang Xiaohua? Wen Qingfan didn't dare to look into Ji Yan's eyes. He thought for a moment and hurriedly answered old man Gu Qiong's question. Damn it! Old man Yi cursed. Wen Qingfan, didn't you receive the Dao Alliance's order? That. Wen Qingfan stammered, I didn't make it to the Alliance meeting. I heard. I was expelled by the Dao Alliance, so I didn't rush back. I visited a few good friends and I just rushed back to Coiling Dragon Mountain. Who's in charge of the Wen clan now? Old man Yi asked again. Fourth ancestor Wen Zhou. Wen Qingfan seemed to have thought of something and hurriedly answered, however, I heard from the disciples that a distinguished guest just arrived. The fourth ancestor used the neon sky welcome guest that the Wen clan hasn't used for a long time. P.S. Fellow Taoists who like this book, please subscribe to it at Qidian, vote for it, give it a recommendation vote, collect it, or tip it. You're tuning in to the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.